Political Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Mean of Revolution, and Kamala has denounced Jesus before the world. Ooh, these Democrats are demons. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button, like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know Coffee is live. You in the House of Revolution. Support the platform. We got to get right into this, y'all. Because when I seen it, I couldn't believe it, but they the demons. They is straight sinners. And Kamala Harris can't stand the Most High. She can't stand the name of Jesus. She can't stand none of the holy teachings. That's why they love Sodom and Gomorrah.
So I was sent this and asked to do a reaction.
We're gonna get into this.
And when I saw what it was, I was like, there's no way she would say something like this and throw away that many Christian votes. No way. Well,
make sure you
let's
all you
check it out.
Christian friends who
shall we
voting for Kamala.
Oh boy.
So a few weeks ago, I attended the Trump rally here in my town. Before I dive into what I'm about to share, here's a peek at that.
Okay.
Well, today I found out that Kamala Harris was coming to my town, so I decided to go. I wanted to see the differences. Notably, I had to show my ID to get in to see her. But anyway, I was making a video talking actually about how...
Well, I got to tell you this, too, and that's good that she looked at both sides, wanted to go to both rallies. That's good. You know.
Oh, sad I was that the loudest cheering at the rather small event came in support of abortion. When I panned over to the crowd and to her speaking... and
why would people cheer killing your unborn children? Doesn't that just sound like some ancient savagery? It sounds right. It does. Like you would think that, like we'd be reading about this in our history books about this ancient people that used to do human sacrifice, and they also would abort their unborn children. And like,
and I caught something I wasn't expecting. Check it out. Not a lot of energy here, but everyone just cheered and screamed for killing babies. So that was disappointing. Anyway, here she is. Did you hear that? Some guy in the crowd shouted, "Jesus is Lord." And Kamala said, "I think you're at the wrong rally." And
wow.
Then she said, try the smaller one down the street.
Kamala said, get out of here with that talk about Yahshua or the Most High. We don't want to hear about no Jesus. We don't want to hear that talk. That's what she said, y'all. This Indian lady showing her true colors.
Everyone laughed and cheered, but I was at that rally. There were almost 7,000 people at it. Today they said there were 2,500. Nobody waiting. Open spaces. I wanted everyone who's a believer to hear that for themselves.
Again, we're not going to be gaslighted on this. We remember Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally.
You're at the wrong rally if you're yelling Jesus is Lord and the King of Kings. And all praise to the Most High. If you go to Kamala Harris, you say all praise to the Most High. She said, you in the wrong place to talk that Most High talk to me. Woo! I knew this lady was evil.
That says it right there. So if you Christian, you just heard that. Why would you be voting for her?
No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Come on, I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for this explanation. I'm waiting for the explanation. I can't wait. Get to keyboard typing. You tell me You tell me what sane reason you would have for voting for her. Christians, come on now, come with it. I can't wait. I can't wait to look at the comment section on this. Post comments down below. Let me know what you think.
No, you're Jesus Lord. Kamala Harris said, oh, hell no, you in the wrong place for that. We talking about abortions here. That lady was full of the devil. That lady was full of the devil. They were so much into their abortion talk that when that man yelled, Jesus Lord, she couldn't help it. You in the wrong place. Ain't nobody talking about no damn Jesus. We talking about abortions. That's what happened.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally.
This clip is insane, and I think Kamala Harris is going to lose a lot of the Christian vote, if not all of the Christian vote. She essentially mocked a man who shouted out, Jesus is Lord, when Kamala Harris was talking about abortion. I will play the entire clip, and then we will talk about exactly what's happening. And then before we even allow the mainstream media to try and twist this, there's other footage I want to show you guys. But let me first play this clip through.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Oh, you wicked witch.
Okay, the only reason why I'm making this video is so we don't give a chance to the mainstream to try and change this narrative, because there just so happens to be a woman who was
about Jesus. You can't talk about Yeshua. You can't talk about the Most High no more in the Democratic Party. I want the bootlicking shoe shiners the day will come. They won't be able to play Baptist church no more. This the sorority sister. She said the gig is up. Y'all know damn well they're not praying no Most High, these Greek freaks. She couldn't help herself. This ain't going nowhere. She gonna have to come out and answer some serious questions about this. All the black population, everybody in America, all the black people should be disgusted with that. The hell wrong with you? Somebody yell Jesus Lord, and you say you in the wrong place for that. You need to go down there with Trump. What? You saying so Trump got the hold on Christian? Shit, that's what she's saying. That's crazy. I knew we was gonna have to lead with that. I got Benjamin Netanyahu house being drone bombed lined up for y'all. Oh, yes, that happened. Hezbollah sent him a Christmas present. But when I heard her say this, I say, no, let's get to her first.
Was at the rally who accidentally caught the audio, and you could see how dead silent it was, and there was no chance in heck that Kamala is going to try and play the card of, I had no idea what they said.
When I panned over to the crowd and to her speaking, and I caught something I wasn't expecting. Check it out.
Not a lot of energy here, but everyone just cheered and screamed for killing babies. So that was disappointing. Anyway, here she is.
Did you hear that? Some guy in the crowd shouted, Jesus is Lord. And Kamala said, I think you're at the wrong rally. And then she said, try the smaller one down the street. Everyone laughed and laughed and cheered. But I was at that rally. There were almost 7,000 people at it. Today they said there were 2,500. Nobody waiting. Open spaces.
Cheering, killing kids.
I wanted everyone who's a believer to hear that for themselves.
Now, this all comes at a pretty insane time, because now we're a day after, or a little over 24 hours, where Kamala actually skipped the Al Smith dinner, which is a really big white-collar Catholic event, essentially where people can donate a lot of money to Catholic ministries at this event. And I actually did a YouTube video talking about how Donald Trump just roasted everyone at the event, and that's sort of what it is. It's supposed to be everyone get together, have a good time, roast some people, all in good fun, and donate a ton of money. Well, Kamala skipped that, and that definitely rubbed a lot of Catholics the wrong way. But also her little speech that she did and her little skit also sort of really annoyed a lot of Catholics.
Your Eminence and distinguished guests, the Al Smith dinner provides a rare opportunity
to set aside partisanship.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, what's going on? Who was that?
Oh, sorry, Mary Catherine Gallagher. Mary Catherine Gallagher. It's so nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Mary Catherine. Right now I'm trying to record my speech for tonight's dinner.
Oh, yeah, I know. I just want to say that I'm Catholic, and tonight is one of the biggest dinners next to the Last Supper.
It is a very important dinner, and it's an important tradition that I'm so proud to be a part of.
Sometimes when I get nervous, I stick my fingers under my arms and I simmer them like that.
Referred to as the Catholic Met Gala. 22% of Americans identify as Catholic. Catholics will be a key demographic in every battleground state. I'm sorry, why is Vice President Harris not here? I mean, consider this. This is a room full of Catholics and Jews in New York City. This is a layup for the Democratic nominee. I mean, in her defense, I mean, she did find time to appear on The View, Howard Stern, Colbert, and the longtime staple of campaigning, the Call Her Daddy podcast. You know, this event.
Now, I know there's Christians out there who don't even consider Catholics Christian or etc. But again, at the end of the day, I think a lot of Christians, when they see this clip, will actually end up being unified at the end of all of this. Consider Kamala is a Christian. She claims to be a Christian. That's up to debate. I'm going to take her word for it. But again, this is probably one of the largest insults that covers all of Christians around the world, not only U.S. Christians, to where this could be extremely detrimental to Kamala. Again, when somebody says Jesus is Lord or our Christ is King, this is a proclamation. This is a fact. This is what Christians are all about. This is the backbone of Christianity. And for Kamala to sort of have that smug face and to be like, you're at the wrong rally. Again, as I make this video, I want to put this out there and hopefully people will see this before the mainstream tries to change it. You saw the third-party clip. You saw what she had to say. It was not that big of a rally. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I try to be pretty down the middle and try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know how Kamala is going to get away with this one. And I totally forgot to give this perspective because I just want to put this out there as well. There are Christians out there that I am seeing on like X and on Instagram and other platforms, TikTok, saying that, look, Christians should not be shouting things like this. Christians should stay in their lane. And I'm talking about Christians critiquing other Christians. This is probably, and it won't be the only time where Christians are having a very hard time to sort of decipher between Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. But again, when you look at everything in context, Kamala was talking about Roe v. Wade and talking about abortion, essentially. And this is why I'm going to assume the man shouted out, Jesus is Lord. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know who the man was. I don't know if he was a Christian, but definitely this is a Christian statement that the majority of Christians stand on as the backbone of Christianity because Christ is Lord. So again, without a doubt, there's definitely that narrative on the other side amongst Christians where should Christians be disruptive? Should they just sit there and should they just accept what Kamala is saying? So I just wanted to put that out there to let people know that even amongst Christians, this is heavily debated on whether or not Christians should be so public about something like this and could be seen as causing a disruption. So I'll let you guys decide in the comments what you all think.
Because ours is a fight for the future, and it is a fight for freedom. For freedom. Like the fundamental freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. And again, we're not going to be gaslighted on this. We remember Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street. Come on.
You see how the crowd went crazy? You see how people absolutely supported this demonic behavior? Let me tell you something, bro. In addition to the fact that she wouldn't be the best president from a policy perspective, that you wouldn't get anything different than you got over the last 3.5 years, that our borders had been completely left open and she's provided no reasonable explanation as to why they undid over 94 of Trump's policies that gave us protections at the border, that the economy was absolutely and is absolutely floundering, and jobs, people are being laid off, required to come back to work. They've moved. People are leaving the United States of America, American citizens, while immigrants is continuing to take over. Forget all of that for a second. All right. Let's just have a conversation based off of right and wrong. If people yell out, Jesus is Lord, and you say, oh, no, you at the wrong rally, while at the same time advocating for the removal of children, especially at late stages, and then cloaking it in the narrative to say that it's just women controlling their own bodies and reproductive rights. That is demonic. And as a people, especially within Black culture, but let alone in America in general, because our dollar still says, in God we trust. Last I checked, let me just make sure. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm off. Maybe they changed it. Yep. It's not $1, but it's a 5. Definitely says in God we trust right there. I know it's reversed, but you can see it right there. And so where is the civility in this? Where is the acknowledgement of the fact that when you align with a specific party who has drawn a line in the sand and dug their heels in and said, listen, if you support this narrative, then we don't support you. But then they're trying to say that we're inclusive, but basically they're saying that we're including the devil into our lives and that everybody should have a say and a right to continue to push forward this narrative that's not best for us. And even when Republicans compromise by saying, listen, we're not trying to remove your ability to do what you need to do, even though we need to have some lines drawn to where, hey, man, late-term pregnancy and all of that. Now, we understand rape and incest and all of this stuff, but when you're talking about late-term pregnancy and the things that Tim Walz has supported and written in the law and the different line provisions that they've removed that now allow for women, and they say that's between her and her doctor, mind your own business, but what happened to the rules and the laws that then align with how we're supposed to live civilly as human beings? And then when people say Jesus is Lord, you could have responded any number of ways, but what you chose to say was, oh, no, you at the wrong rally. Absolutely. This is the one thing that I absolutely agree with her on. You are at the wrong rally. You should go to the larger one. She lied about that part. The larger one down the street. Because as a conservative man, I'm not even going to say Black man, I'm an American. I align with people based off of the content of their character, not the color of their skin. As a conservative man, I do not stand for and I do not support the idea that first you don't even acknowledge the fact that Jesus is Lord. And the second thing that you say is you need to get up out of here if that's what your sentiment is. And y'all think that this is the woman that should be leading the United States of America where she don't even have good character? What church does she go to? What is her belief? What is her faith? Who rock with her? And I'm disappointed in y'all churches, especially these black churches. Y'all keep getting involved in politics, and not only do you get involved in politics, you sell your whole congregation out to the devil. This whole reproductive rights issue should not be used as a form of contraception. This reproductive rights issue, and you know what I'm talking about, should not be used as a form of contraception. I have never in my life ever worried about having to convince or have a conversation with a woman about removing something that I would create. You know why? Because I have the choice of whether or not I want to participate in the first place. That is my duty, my responsibility to take ownership and responsibility of what I created and then nurture it and make sure that I provide for it and put it in the best position possible to be a blessing and to leave this earth in a better space had I not been here. No way in the world that you can sit here and justify to me. And I had this conversation with my family who was very religious, very spiritual, and very much believes in Jesus Christ himself. And they cannot answer this question for me. How can you align with somebody? And every time that I have a conversation with not only them, but people that is outside, street interviews, anybody that says that they want to vote for Kamala Harris, the thing, because it's one thing to vote out of ignorance. That means that you don't know no better. But once you know better, you now held to a greater responsibility, and even preaches that inside of the word of God. But here's the thing that I'm trying to understand. Just as a human being, with all of these things, and this is not the only issue. This is just one of the main things that they're standing on. This is the main platform issue that they're standing on as a party to try to push you in order to vote for them. Where have we turned to? Who have we turned to where we can actually justify that this makes sense and that people are really celebrating in the name of, because you know they like to term it to make it sound better, and they didn't brand it and market it to you, and so they say reproductive rights. You know what it is. You know what it is. If you know anything about Planned Parenthood and how they pulled up to the Democratic National Convention, if you know anything about what has happened in these communities to where so many, and I mean millions and millions of babies are not here as a result of it, yet we let in so many people inside of our borders. If you're really paying attention to the idea that they want to give you $6,000, they haven't explained how we're going to continue to pay for it, $6,000 for new babies, but then at the same time, they want to give you the right to terminate one. How do you then justify being a Christian? How do you justify believing in God? How do you justify just being a righteous human being while at the same time when somebody say Jesus is Lord, she said, oh no, you at the wrong rally. Yeah, come on in. We welcome you with open arms over here on this side. And for people that say that they believe in God, I'm amazed. But make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. Also get your tickets. I'm pulling up to Atlanta and teach Hanley 40% off your
Republicans are saying, and again, I want to hear our Democrats to see what they think about it. What they're saying is it shows Bob Casey knows that Donald Trump is strong in Pennsylvania. Some say it shows they know he's going to win Pennsylvania. Kind of extraordinary in the polarized environment in which we live. Whatever you want to read into it, just at a minimum, for an incumbent Democratic senator, a member of a party that despises Donald Trump, to brag about his working with Trump on two issues is a pretty big deal.
Well, look at what we have here. Take a look at Real Clear Politics. Now, I reported before that a couple days ago that Kamala Harris was now losing in 6 of the 7 battleground states. But now we've been updated today, everyone, and it looks like she's now losing 7 out of 7
7 for 7.
states.
She ain't coming back.
Battleground states. These are the ones that are going to decide the election because of how close, how they swing. They can go left or they can go right. Okay, so left, right. Look at this. And the one I want you to pay close attention to is Pennsylvania. In fact, I'm going to play this clip for you guys. Take a listen to this whole clip, and then we're going to come back to this. I want to show you how Democrats are getting desperate and how they're abandoning her in some of these swing states, and particularly the most important swing state, because both campaigns, both Trump and Harris, are constantly in Pennsylvania. Everyone says Pennsylvania is going to make the difference in this election. She has to have Pennsylvania. Trump doesn't have to have Pennsylvania, but he wants to have it. Okay, because this is looking like this is going to be a landslide based on the polling. And there's more details to that. But take a look at this, and then we're going to get back into it.
Right. As I said, big issue is the question of the confidence that Democrats have. We went into the last weekend, a week ago, with Democrats feeling really worried. And because of developments over the weekend and into the early part of the week and through most of this week, I would say Democrats felt a lot better. They felt energized. And part of that is the Fox interview was, I believe people mischaracterize it, a Republican spin for the most part, in saying the Fox interview was intended to simply rev up the base. Just don't believe that. It was intended to rev up the base and to reach undecided voters, more moderate, including some Republicans. I don't know if it achieved the second thing. It certainly achieved the first. And part of why Democrats were feeling better in the middle of the week was because the base was revved up. And when the base revs up, the blue echo chamber says she's doing great. She fought with Bret Baier. She's doing these podcasts. She's out on the stump. Her performance level, as we saw this morning, the clips we showed, is better. And so,
and let me just say this. So this, you remember as he said, and this is two-way. This is a show that's on YouTube. It's very neutral. That's Mark Halperin. A lot of times he goes on different. He's a very well connected reporter. This is a neutral, independent Zoom call. They'll have like former prime ministers of Israel. They'll have Newt Gingrich. They'll have former Democratic governors. Like it is, and then he also is the person that had all of the inside information on Joe Biden dropping out of the race. He has access to internal pollings from different camps, and so he tries to keep it neutral and talk about the bad things for the left, bad things for the right, good things. And so with this, they were hoping, and the spin that we saw everywhere was that her Fox News, which they saw it as a debate, I guess, where she just was great. She was brilliant. She, Bret Baier was just being misogynistic and wouldn't let her answer the questions, even though she goes on this long diatribe about, I grew up in the middle class, and let me be clear. Let's be clear. And then proceed to talk about Trump, no matter the answer. And so, but Democrats were trying to spin this as though in mainstream media, so this was great. This was going to really catapult her, right? Because they were feeling so low. So they need a lot of copium in order to, keep going. Even if you go to channels that are like liberal channels, even on YouTube, you just see all the copium. And even Democrat pollster channels are now, one did today of showing how Donald Trump looks like he's going to have a landslide. And people were in the comments about to self-delete and like, this can't be true. I won't be able to live. I've had to call my therapist for an emergency session. So they tried to spin that narrative, but now the new polling came out that shows it actually hurt her. Okay. So what Republicans thought, or just an independent such as myself that thought it was a train wreck for her, a bunch of non-answers and blame, and no accountability. And she even said that the administration needs to take accountability. Trump needs to take accountability for what he's done, for his how he's run the country. But then when she's been held accountable, no, it's still Trump. It's not me. It's not Joe Biden. None of this. That's a long thing. But take a listen to this detail. This is how you know it is that bad. And I don't think the polls accurately show how bad it is, because national polling, the margin of error, and they always undercount Trump's the vote for Trump. They tried to say, well, 2022, they said it was going to be a red wave, and it wasn't. So, he has lost support, and it's just not true. You have to understand, Trump was not on the ballot. Dobbs had just happened, and Trump, it wasn't a presidential race. And then also Republicans were not energized to go out and vote because of all the foolishness that had happened in the election, where things just overnight suddenly went to Joe Biden. And we're not going to get into that because YouTube gets funny, but a lot of Republicans have no confidence in voting. And especially in 2022, that Republicans had no confidence in the polls. Okay, had no confidence in voting. But now the base is not only energized, but they picked up a lot of independents and even Democrats. But let's continue. And not only actually, they picked up Democrats, even Democrat senators who are running. Trump has picked up.
They were feeling better. It swung back a little bit tonight. And the main reason I believe it swung back, or not the main reason, a main reason, is an ad from Bob Casey, the Democratic incumbent senator in Pennsylvania, whose polling lead over Dave McCormick, his Republican challenger, has tightened according to almost every public poll and private polling, which shows the race almost a dead even. And Bob Casey, like all incumbents, is interested in Kamala Harris winning, but he's interested in saving his job. And I think Republicans are making a very big deal about this ad. You'll see why in a moment. And Democrats are trying to avoid talking about it. So let's take a look at number one, please. Bob Casey, new ad in Pennsylvania.
A Republican.
And I'm a Democrat.
Our marriage, pure bliss. But on politics, we just don't agree. Except for Bob Casey. He's independent.
That's right.
Casey's leading the effort to stop corporate greedflation and price gouging. Casey bucked Biden to protect fracking. And he sided with Trump to end NAFTA and put tariffs on China to stop them from cheating. So in this House, we agree. It's Bob Casey who's doing right by Pennsylvania.
I'm Bob Casey, and I definitely approve this message.
So we'll talk to our guests in a moment about that ad, and I'll probably show it to you again because I think it's so significant. But you imagine, trying to think of an analog for that, if Rick Scott in Florida ran an ad bragging about working with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on two things, how remarkable that would be. So
and that he actually went against Trump in something. So in this ad, he brags about going against Biden. First of all, says he's independent. He's not. He's a Democrat. The incumbent Democrat says that I fought against Biden and I worked with Trump on two things. So he's distancing himself from being a Democrat, distancing himself from Biden, aligning himself with Trump, and then Kamala, she's a non-factor. Why even talk about her?
Republicans are saying, and again, I want to hear our Democrats to see what they think about it. What they're saying is it shows Bob Casey knows that Donald Trump is strong in Pennsylvania. Some say it shows they know he's going to win Pennsylvania. Kind of extraordinary in the polarized environment in which we live. Whatever you want to read into it, just at a minimum, for an incumbent Democratic senator, a member of a party that despises Donald Trump, to brag about his working with Trump on two issues is a pretty big deal.
Okay, so back at it. So you can see now, everything is now, all the battlegrounds are for Trump. Let's go to Pennsylvania. So on this day in history, October 19th, 2020, Biden was at plus 3.8 in Pennsylvania. In October 19th of 2016, Clinton was at plus 6.2. And they keep saying they've adjusted the polls for the Trump vote and all that. They really haven't. They really have not understood Trump. They do not understand people who vote for him, and they don't know how to poll them at all. And this is why they're even surprised that Black men, they were denying it forever. But then all of a sudden, Black men aren't voting for Kamala Harris, and even Black women are turning. Latinos, it's like they're in shock. And now they're trying to, get the Muslim vote back, which is another video I'm going to do. Muslims have abandoned the Democrat Party as well, and Arab Americans. It's they would rather vote for Trump, or they're voting third party like Jill Stein. So now the Democrats are even trying to put out ads against Jill Stein, okay, the Green Party candidate, because they need every single vote because they have lost so much, and the internal polling is catastrophic compared to this. But look, so she is even lower than they both were, okay? And then when you actually, in fact, let me try to pull up how much he won. Let me see how much they actually got, not where they were in the polling back at the same time in 2016 and 2020. So look at this. They had Clinton up. Sorry, guys, it's kind of, hopefully you can see it. They had Clinton, we'll start in 2016. They had once everything was counted and collected, at the end result of election day, Trump was up 0.7 over Hillary Clinton. Okay. When she was polling, let's go back up. She was polling at the same time in history, same day in 2016, at plus 6.2. But Trump ended up winning at plus 0.7. Biden won the state at plus 1.2. Polling showed him at plus 3.8 at this time last year. So you can see that Trump always outperforms the polls. Always outperforms the polls. And again, this year in particular, the internal polling is much worse than the public polling. And we're talking about, some people say, oh, this Republican polls, so they're skewing it. No, these are all A-plus pollsters. There's some liberal or Democrat leaning, pollsters that are in here too, some neutral ones. But you put the aggregate together, you can see what's going on. But then you can also see that Trump is getting stronger, because these include things. They include it's different snapshots at different times. But the closer you get to election day, the more you're going to see the trend move towards who is actually going to win. So I wanted to show you that. I don't care about the spin that's out there. I don't care about all of that. What they're trying to feed us in the mainstream media, shame people into voting for Kamala Harris, shame, keep talking about how Trump is orange man bad and you're just a low information voter. You're MAGA cult. You're insane. You're crazy. You want a dictatorship. All the shaming that they try to do, that they have done for a long time, it's not working. It's turned people off. And they just can't figure it out. They cannot figure out why the American people just aren't buying it. But guys, this is devastating news for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And again, a Democrat's incumbent senator brags about fighting against Joe Biden, going against him, and bragging about working with Trump on two things. And again, Kamala Harris isn't even a factor. And now he's independent. Leave a comment below. Let me know.
This is history. This is history. Right now, you're witnessing history on the floor of the U.S. Senate. It is a Christmas miracle underway where, for the first time in a generation, Republicans and Democrats are arm in arm tonight saying, we are sending too many people to prison. They're coming out bitter and not better. We want to make a tremendous difference. I want to say Hakeem Jeffries on the left, Jared Kushner, and Donald Trump on the right have brought together a coalition like I've never seen.
2 years later.
To be a parent this morning. It's easier to be a dad. It's easier to tell your kids character matters. It matters. Telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters. And it's easier for a whole lot of people. If you're Muslim in this country, you don't have to worry if the president doesn't want you here. If you're an immigrant, you don't have to worry if the president's going to be happier to have
babies snatched away, send dreamers back for no reason. This is vindication for a lot of people.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this fascinating story from President Trump that he told about Crime Van Jones of the Crime Negro Network, CNN. He told his story on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, in which he's going to talk about helping out Van Jones with criminal justice reform, something that apparently Van Jones was crying to Trump about, which, again, is just hilarious that Trump said he was crying. Because apparently Van Jones cries about everything, okay? I mean, he's just a crime Negro, right? So, anyways, Trump is going to explain how much of a snake Van Jones is, because Trump actually helped out Van Jones in ways that Democrats probably would never help out somebody like Van Jones. But yet, in return for Trump's help, what did Van Jones do? Well, he went on TV and started trashing Trump, okay, in his presidency, and boohoo whining and crying after Joe Biden got elected, right? And that's essentially a good example of how these people in the mainstream liberal media, how phony they are, how fake they are, how disloyal they are. They're just snakes, okay? And a lot of these people know that you have to be anti-Trump, even if you know that Trump is a good person, right? They have to go in the media and trash him in order to maintain their jobs, right? I think that's what's happening with Alyssa Fair Griffin, right? I think Alyssa Fair Griffin is also a snake, also a sleazebag as well, too. She worked for the Trump administration, and Trump actually did a recent podcast in which he exposed her writing him a letter, right, about how thankful she was to work for his administration. And now all of a sudden, she's one of the most Trump deranged individuals in the mainstream liberal media, although she claims to be a conservative Republican.
The View, I know them. So Whoopi's a filthy mouth on her. I've hired Whoopi over the years, at hotels that I own. We hired her once, and I went. She was so filthy, disgusting, dirty with her mouth that the whole group left. There was nobody watching her. She was a comedian. And you know what? Nobody knows this. She said, I admire you so much. Would you do me a favor? What? Would you do a cameo in a movie I'm making? I did a cameo in some crummy movie she made. And then I run for politics. Joy is, she thought the world was flat. You saw that, right? Joy is dumb. The other one worked for me. She wrote a letter. One of them, I don't know, whatever her name is. She worked for me in the White House. She writes a letter. This was the greatest experience. You're the greatest president. I love you. You're the greatest president. There's nobody. We have the letter someplace. It's a letter that she wrote when she left the White House. Then all of a sudden they hire her and she goes negative. Okay. They said, hey, we'll give you a lot of money if you go negative, whatever her name is. Let's see. The other two I didn't know. Oh, this guy I know, Jimmy Fallon. I'm telling you, I hate to use, but they're all losers. They're all lightweights now.
Yeah, so you see now you hear that. Now, I personally hope that Trump exposes Alyssa Fair Griffin, right? There's just something about her that I really, really, really don't like, okay? I think what it is that I know that she's fake. I know that she has sold her soul for money, right? Just like Ana Navarro, she wants to be a part of the club, okay? Because that's how it is. They don't like conservatives and Republicans. As a conservative and a Republican, in order to remain a part of the club, to be invited to the parties, the dinners, okay, you have to hate Trump, right? And this is the crazy thing. You can be a Republican and conservative and not necessarily a fan of Trump, but this woman, Alyssa Fair Griffin, and Ana Navarro as well, too, there's nothing conservative or Republican about them at all, right? On The View, they don't take any conservative or Republican positions. They're literally just there to be anti-Trump, right? I mean, you can be conservative and Republican without being anti-Trump. But these people, they're just anti-Trump, and they're also liberal while claiming to be conservative and Republican. Anyways, that's a whole nother video for another day. I can go on and on and on about those two individuals who I strongly dislike. But we got to talk about Van Jones, who is another one of these individuals that, Trump did favors for, and he ended up stabbing Trump in the back because, again, in order to be a part of the club, in order to get on CNN, to be on all these outlets, to get the fame and the glory, you have to hate Trump, okay? Although Trump did Van Jones a favor, and Van Jones ended up backstabbing him, which is what Trump is going to talk about here. So without further ado, let's get into it.
I saw a guy named Van Jones. He's not any. I don't think anybody knows who he is. He's a commentator for CNN, and he came to see me in the White House, and he was crying.
I remember that.
He was crying because I bring these things up because it's a lack of.
Always.
I don't know. There's something about loyalty. You help somebody with something. He came in with a fairly large group of people, mostly black people. And he was devastated because criminal justice reform wasn't going to happen. Obama didn't do it, and didn't even come close. Bush didn't try. Nobody was going to do it. And I'm the only one that could have done it. And he was with a group of people that they were begging to do it. They were 5 votes short, and they had to be conservative votes because there was nobody else left, right? And I guess you needed the 61 or 60 something, maybe 66, but 61 is a hard vote. And he made a plea to me, Van Jones, total sleazebag. He made a plea to me to help him and help this group of people. And they explained how for years they've been trying to get it and they've been unable to get it. And I said, well, let's take a look at it. And I studied it for a little while and spoke to them. And I said, you know what, I'm going to help you. It's going to help the black people in particular. And I'm going to get it for you guys. And I called up 5 very conservative senators. And I'll never forget one of the senators who was in charge of it. He was literally leading the charge against it. And I mean, his whole career was this. He was going to stop criminal justice reform. Not because he was, anti-black, just he didn't like it. He didn't want it. And he was in the papers every day. He's fighting it, winning very easily. And I helped him get elected. Without me, he wouldn't have gotten elected. I'll never forget it. I called him up. Now, he's in the heat of passion. He is fighting this all the way. Not something he would ever give up. You couldn't, there's some things you can't. I call him up. He gets on the phone. I didn't say a word. I said, hello. And he goes, I'm giving it to you. I said, what are you giving me? I'm giving you criminal justice reform. That's why you're calling, right? I said, it is why I'm calling. He said, you got me elected. I disagree with you, but I'm giving it to you just like that. I said, that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard, because I also have the opposite where I got a lot of people elected. When I endorse somebody in history, and I don't want to brag, but in history, you can get another chart on that one. I mean, I'm like 289 and almost nothing for endorsements. And he said, you got me elected. I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for you. And I did, but I got a lot of people elected, and some of them forget. And I said, that's the coolest thing. I said, thank you. I said, do you mind if I call a couple of the? Nope, you do whatever you want. Now,
yeah. So before he goes further here, I just want to make the point that this story is important because when you listen to individuals like Roland Martin, right, and the pro-blackity blacks, they will do anything, right, to debunk the narrative that Trump helped out black folks, right? That Trump went out of his way to do things, okay, to benefit black people. Like, for example, when it comes to HBCU funding, which disproportionately benefits black people, Trump went out his way to extend it, right? But again, if you listen to people like Roland Martin, all the other pro-blackity blacks, they'll make up all types of excuses and reasons for why you shouldn't give Trump credit for that, right? That's what they'll do. And they do the same thing when it comes to this as well, too. They'll say things like, oh, well, Republicans and Democrats both agreed on it. A lot of this was done under Obama, right, in regards to the legislation in and of itself. And I'm like, okay, well, Trump still signed the bill because he could have vetoed it and sent it back to Congress, but he didn't do it. He still signed the bill. But according to these people, no, he doesn't get credit. He didn't do anything, right, to benefit black people at all, nothing. But he signed the bill. Not only did he sign the bill, but apparently he helped whip up some of the votes that were needed from Republicans who were opposed to it to get them on board
from the bigots in
a bipartisan basis to make it happen. which is something that clearly he doesn't talk about too much, although I think he should, but he doesn't. He doesn't. That's the crazy thing. Trump will do something
has
for
been
some.
opposed to criminal justice reform his whole goddamn political career. Joe Biden has always been against it.
Body, and he'll never talk about it. He'll never say anything about it. Now, he does brag a lot, right? But there's sometimes when he'll tell stories, I'm like, why is he not telling this story, right? Why isn't he telling this story more often, right? Because this is easy pushback to this idea that, oh, well, he doesn't get any credit for the First Step Act. This is something that Democrats and Republicans had already worked out before he got.
Because he didn't want to seem like he did it just so black people will vote for him. That's what he was trying to avoid. People saying he bought the votes. So he did that and he let it go. He damn right he should have been talking about Van Jones and them black leaders begging him, groveling at his feet. Could you please help us with criminal justice reform? He got on the phone with the bigots in Congress, and bada boom, bada bing, they got what they needed. And then they backstabbed him, went back to calling him a racist. Hey, they should have talked about that. But he didn't want to give Van Jones no clout. No, he didn't want to be mentioning the peasant.
He got in the office. Well, apparently not, right? Apparently not. Which is part of the reason why Obama didn't get it done. But Trump gets it done, and they don't want to give Trump any credit for anything. But behind closed doors, according to him, he was whipping up the votes. He was doing what he got to do because of crying Negroes like Van Jones coming into his office begging for it, right? It's amazing. The man does not get enough credit.
This is a guy who was the leader of the fight. I didn't even ask. He knew what I was calling for because he knew that I was going to help Van Jones, this Van Jones guy. I was going to help him. And you'll understand why I'm being nasty to him now, because what happened later is disgraceful. So I said, thank you very much, Senator. I'm so happy that I did help you. I think loyalty is a great thing. And that was it. So I had his vote. I then called 4 other guys, all of whom were against it. And I said, I'd love to have, and they, they don't do it for a lot of presidents, but they do it for me. And I got them 5 votes that they needed, and criminal justice reform passed, right? Then, and I was happy for them. I was happy for everybody. Everybody was happy. They couldn't believe they got it done. And it was something that really the black population wanted far more than anybody else. I've never even heard it mentioned with other people. It was mostly the black population.
Yeah, because they don't have to worry about it as much. They're not over here, making their criminals the main priority in their community, right? Only black people. We the only people that make criminals the main priority. But I mean, in this case right here, with the First Step Act.
That is a finesse that the Democratic Party did. I've been preaching against that. Because I feel for that for a long time too. That's all they talk about: criminal justice reform, civil rights. I keep saying all black people are not criminals. That's not right to say one of the biggest things black people need is criminal justice reform. What about all black people who never commit no crimes, never went to prison, law-abiding citizens? That's not right. But it's a finesse. And then it's a smear that white Democrats love. They love that. We got to do that for y'all. We're going to get y'all something. That's disgusting. But that's a finesse. And that's what they will offer us that for 1,000 years if we let them: criminal justice reform, low-income housing, and voters' rights. It's nothing else. Gay rights now, it's nothing else on that platform. That's it for black people, period.
They kind of roll back some of the excesses that people argue were wrongfully implemented by people like Joe Biden, right? Now, me personally, I'm a tough on crime type person, right? I believe that, the crime bill, for the most part, was, at the time, it was necessary, right? Black people were begging for it, okay? And see, a lot of people want you to forget that. And people like to use the crime bill against Joe Biden. But to be honest with you, I think that that was one of the rare pieces of legislation, bipartisan legislation that happened back in the 90s.
That's goddamn lot, because he half-ass bootlicker goddamn shoulder. The crime bill was disgusting. You sat there and dumped all them drugs into the black community, and then you sick the goddamn police on the black community. Like I say, I never seen the crime bill go up against the Hells Angels and the motorcycle gangs. They never used that crime bill to wipe out the bikers who been the big traffickers in this country. The motherfucking Aryan Nation, The Aryan Brotherhood way bigger than Big Meat. You think, man, the Aryan Brotherhood make BMF look like schoolboys. And that is serious fucking business, man. And with the murders to go with it. You talk about trafficking. Man, come on, bro. It's some shit don't in any federal prison. Some shit you ain't getting shit if the Aryans don't let it into a lot of these prisons. So when these bastards be talking about that 95 crime bill, I say it's disgusting because you just targeted blacks. Black people not the only criminals in this fucking country.
I think it was overall positive because crime declined tremendously after the crime bill. Now, that doesn't mean that some things weren't overdone, right? And that some things didn't need to be rolled back, which happened with the First Step Act. I'm just saying that ultimately, at the end of the day, Trump got that done, right? He reined in some of the excesses, the things that people complain about the most, but he doesn't get credit for doing that, right? He doesn't get credit for doing it. And I think that's the sad.
Access to my ass, Trump was reversing the bullshit, the mandatory minimums, all that. That's bullshit. Yeah, it should never be no such thing called a mandatory minimum. Oh, if you get caught with drugs, that's outrageous, bro. The hell? No, that's nonsense, bro. Now we know they wanted slave labor. Hell no, man. Absolutely not. See, that's why I could sit in the room with the Republicans and tell them, no, that's them racist ass policies. That's bullshit because you haven't sicked your attack dogs on your good biker brethren yet. So I'm always gonna say that. Hell, I don't even fuck all that.
Boy, she tried to pull a fast one on black men. Oh, she tried to pull a fast one. She put out a plan talking about, oh, she got something for black men. She did a plan on the African Diaspora News Channel. We did a whole live stream going through that particular plan. Well, they had to admit, because, you know, we was going through it and it was saying black entrepreneurs and others. It was saying HBCUs and minority serving institutions and kept saying others, minority, this, that, and the third. And we told you a long time ago, when you see them say others, minority, distressed communities, displaced, urban, that's always a finesse. If it don't say black to black all the way through from the top to the bottom, it's not for us. It's for everybody else. Well, now she had to come out with her campaign and admit that she tried to finesse black men into voting for her. Boy, you Democrats and Kamala, shame on you for that. Let's go ahead and check this out. Boom, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, the Wall Street Journal. Kamala Harris's agenda for black men will be open to all. Coming directly from her campaign. That's from the Wall Street Journal. So that was a whole finesse.
How disgusting. How disgusting. But she told us that. See, the jokes was on them niggas. Jokes on them. Remember, Crimea River Van Jones said that wasn't legislation. That was a love letter to black men. That's a lie. She don't even like black men. That she say that's for everybody. But she said, I'm not going to do that specifically for y'all. No, everybody. Now she had to come out and say, because, you know, it's racist whites in the Democratic Party will say, hey, what's all this black men stuff? Oh, hell no, you're going to give them a leg up? And just she had to come out and say, no, everybody's going to get something. Oh, so you mean the black people are going to stay in the same position that they get? Because if you hand us all something, then we still above them. Correct.
Right? But we supposed to go out and vote for her. Now, here it says, Vice President Kamala Harris, the opportunity agenda for black men aims to show up with support from pillar of the Democratic base, with a key section promising 1 million loans that are forgivable to black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. It also includes education, training, and mentorship programs that help black men get good paying jobs, legalizing recreational marijuana, and creating opportunities for black Americans, which that's the most offensive thing that just got on my nerves, to see the new industry, and helping black men provide care for the aging parents. While Harris' rhetoric suggests that she will provide such benefits specifically to black men and women, it turns out the words "and others" are doing a ton of work. It said the campaign says that the program listed under the agenda for black men will be open to all Americans, on a race-neutral basis. So that whole thing was a waste of time. And y'all say, see, she got an agenda for black men. We never asked for an agenda for black men. We said one agenda for black people. But as you can see, when we called it out first. Now they had to respond to it. They say the vice president is clear-eyed about how black men have long been denied the tools that allow them to grow their wealth, get good paying job, and support their loved ones. She is championing solutions that will benefit all Americans and address these specific barriers to economic opportunity. Now, of course, they talk about her background. They say she was a lawyer, former state attorney general, knows that under Chief Justice John Roberts, the conservative-dominated Supreme Court has little patience for racial preferences. In 2023, the court found it unconstitutional to consider race in college admissions. And this is why we don't talk about race. We talk about lineage base. That's what we talk about. Lineage, freedmen. That is a federal classification for black Americans. You can't go in there saying black. You got to say freedmen. Okay. The term freedman is the best delineation term on any kind of paperwork. So if you want to do a scholarship, if you want to do anything, but do it based on lineage, because it's not done on race, right? So they talk about your boy Edwin Bloom here, and it said Bloom promised to sue the Harris administration if it enacted what she seems to be promising racially exclusive programs like the ones she has proposed have been repeatedly struck down by the courts in the past year. Because, see, they know good and well about lineage-based things. Is even though the Gender for Black Men programs be open to everyone, the Harris campaign insists it isn't misleading the target audience. The vice president assembled the ideas after hearing powerful stories from black men about the biggest hurdles that still make it too difficult for them to get in their business off the ground. The campaign handout says. Now, they say some proposals sure to benefit the target group, such as increasing federal efforts to combat sickle cell disease. It said, according to the National Institutes of Health, 90% of those afflicted are black. It said, but the Harris campaign acknowledges that the Agenda for Black Men is intended more at reassuring a voting bloc. Look at that. More at reassuring a voting bloc that the candidate knows their concerns and promising exclusive benefits. They say the vice president wants to make black men feel valued, like they have a government that cares about them and their dreams. Okay. So that's the finesse. So Edward Bloom right here, this fella here with the horrible haircut, he said if she put that in action for black people, he is going to sue. And they keep saying, see, Edward Bloom, he can't do nothing about anything if you do it on the area of lineage. Even that Supreme Court decision talked about the freedmen. Okay. That's how you do it. But the whole thing was a finesse. It was a finesse, the whole thing. And it's like this. Most people don't have a whole lot of money to fight with the federal government like that because they have like endless amount of money. He don't. They can cause all kind of problems for him if they want to personally before he even gets to court. Because trust me, they can. He's not big and bad like he claim he is. But the main thing is that was a symbolism piece of work. There was a symbolism plan. It wasn't really for black people like that because it said and others in there. It said and others. And this is the level that they will go to black community to get you to vote Democrat. They want to lie to you. See, but this is the thing. This is the thing. They never anticipated for you and I to read. You remember they used to say, well, if you want to hide something from a black person, put it in a book or a website, make it long where they can't read it. Well, this is the thing. We read. We also have AI too that reads at the same time. And we got AI right in our hands now. And so when you even try to hide certain language, the AI catch it. Yeah. So it's making it a little harder for you to lie. It's making it a little harder for you to be deceptive. But Vice President Kamala Harris knows she was doing bad with black men, and she tried to finesse black men, and she got caught. Understand, we are the pulse. All of us who are on these microphones, who's doing this and have been doing this, we are on the pulse. We catch this stuff early. We analyze it. We go through it just for you, brothers and sisters throughout America. We do it just for you. So you will not be finessed with Vice President Kamala Harris. I don't want nobody trying to finesse me to vote for them. Just say what you're going to do. Even if you're not going to do something, let me know that. And let it be my choice. Nobody likes to be deceived. Nobody. How many of you have been deceived in your life, believe one thing and it was another? I have. And I'm pretty sure many of you have in your lifetime. If you're a human being, you have been deceived. And when you're deceived, you're angry, you're upset. You know what I'm saying? When somebody pull a bait and switch on you, you're angry and upset. So that lady right there, but that goes into her character. She's willing to lie to us as black men. Say, hey, brothers, this for y'all. And then when you start going through it, you catch it. So Democrats are going to try a little bit harder. Go back to the drawing board. Democrats, I'll give you a hint. Get something together for black people, not black men, black people, and go and put the term freedman. Freedman, okay? Give the history of the term freedman, where it comes from, and how freedman is a classification of the descendant of slaves. That is not race-based. That is a classification of people. You understand? Just like when you have those Native American tribes, right? Those tribes not based on race. They're based on lineage. You understand? So if she was serious about it, she would do that. The one good thing that came out also out of the California Reparations Commission was their constitutional lawyer said you cannot do that on race. You got to do it on lineage. And that's the best thing that if nothing else came out of the California Reparations Commission, that was the best part. Do it based on lineage, not race. If you do it on race, it'll be struck down. You know what I'm saying? But y'all should be, you Democrats out there and you shield, shame on y'all. Trying to finesse black men. Instead of actually doing right for black people and having some policy wins during their administration, you wouldn't have to finesse black people at all. You wouldn't have to. Go, like I said before, if you would have gave us an anti-black hate crime bill, like you gave the Asians a bill, the Democrats would be great right now. The Democrats would be wonderful. If you gave us reparations, because you gave the migrants all the money, you don't have to call it reparations. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But if you did the same thing for us, like you did the migrants, I promise you, Kamala Harris would have won this election hands down. If Kamala Harris would have gave us an anti-black hate crime bill, if Kamala Harris had been putting all that money in the pockets of black Americans, I'll be one of the first people lined up to go vote for her. Because I say, hey, okay, Vice President Harris, she did her thing. She made sure we had an anti-black hate crime bill. She put a whole lot of money in black America's pocket. Okay, yeah, I'm good with her. But she didn't do that. So go and ask those migrants to vote for you, which I know so y'all trying to figure something out where they can do it. And then go and ask the Asian community to vote for you. Leave us alone. Stop finessing. Because at least with the Asian community, you can actually show the video of y'all signing the anti-Asian hate crime bill. And y'all could tell them that's the truth. Hey, we delivered for the Asian community. Now it's time for the Asian community to deliver for Democrats. Where are y'all Democrats at talking to the Asian community? It is time for them to be y'all need to get the vote out of them. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. And y'all sitting here lying and trying to bait and switch the black community to come vote for you. But you know what they let me know, ladies and gentlemen? The Democrats are in hella trouble. They are in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. Big time trouble. They got to resort to lying and finessing. And, more and more people I see is not want to vote for her. It's a lot of them want to vote for Trump. And all of them say the same reason why they want to vote for Trump. Not because they like him, but because of the dollar bill, y'all. It's like people say they tired of spending $1,000 in the grocery store and only getting 5 items. It's the truth. I mean, it's the truth. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but you spend 4 or 5 items and you spend $100, $200. Like, why I got this? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like that when Trump was in office. It's been that way when she was in office. She was handling an economy where everything was good. Her and Biden ruined it. So yes, it's her fault. It's her fault. And I'm going to lay it right at her feet every time. Well, you got these Democrat shields. You just hate her. No, I don't have no hatred for her. Not at all. But I do hate what she did to my pocketbook. Oh yeah. I do hate what she has done with inflation. I do hate what she's done with interest rates. I do hate what she's done with the border and letting all these military age males flood this country in the millions. I hate that part of it. But is it personal? No, nothing personal. I don't know her personally. I don't. She may be a funny person to hang around. She may be cool. I don't know personally. But when it comes to politics and when it comes to trying to do this job, she's horrible at it. And sometimes people could be cool people, but they just not a good employee or a good leader. It happens. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it is what it is, because the fruit of a leader is their works. This is that simple. And her works say she's a bad leader. So why would I want to continue another 4 years of horrible leadership? What, I want to start spending $2,000 for five items of groceries? Is that what we're going to? This administration, you're going to see evictions like you've never seen before. You put her in there. It's going to be bad. And then the crazy part, Americans will get evicted, and then she'll put migrants in there on Section 8. Oh, tell me now y'all know she'll do it. You'll get evicted out your rent place, and then she'll move some migrants in there, and they can just charge 2-3 times more what the rent is, and she'll give them Section 8. That's what she'll do. So the migrants not gonna be homeless, but you Americans will be. You go put it in there if you want to. Go ahead. You know what I'm saying? I'm not taking that kind of risk, especially if she up here finessing and lying. I mean, I wasn't taking that risk before, this, but I'm just trying to show y'all, because, some of y'all haven't voted yet. And that's why I tell all my people that follow us, go to early voting, get it over with. You can go in, come back out. That's how it is early voting. Don't go there November the 5th when all those people are there. No, go to early voting. Now, here in my state, the state of Texas, Monday is early voting, and I'm voting that day. I'm gonna go in, do my voting from the top of the ticket all the way down to the bottom, and I'm gonna be cool with that. And I mean that. Vote against blue no matter who. That's bottom line for me. I am not voting in no Democrat. Period.
Has lied about her own genealogy, and many people have not been on this entire journey with us. And so I'm just going to sum it up for you very simply, okay? Kamala is completely lying about her heritage. She pulled the good old Barack Obama, dropped a book, an autobiography that was meant to legitimatize her to the Black public. And for whatever reason, in the public's mind, when somebody drops a book and calls it an autobiography, they just assume that somebody along the way did the due diligence, and therefore it must all be true because they found it in the nonfiction segment of the bookstore, a section of the bookstore. And that's just not true. That leaves a lot of room for politicians to lie. And that's exactly what Kamala did. And you can really see when you go through this book that it is just political blackface. She fails to mention that she is majority white. She fails to mention her white family members, her many white family members. And she neglects to mention them entirely, by the way, while going through great pains to instead offer alternative Black relatives. And what am I talking about when I say alternative Black relatives? I mean, they are not her relatives, but she refers to them as uncles and aunts, I mean, as just one example, Uncle Freddie mentioned in 2 pictures. One picture here, visiting my Uncle Freddie in Harlem. Harlem, haha, get it, black people, haha. I like Harlem. I like fried chicken. I like black-eyed peas. Yeah, and it turns out that guy in the background isn't even her Uncle Freddie. Harlem was always a magical place for me. Okay, cool. Then she mentions Uncle Freddie again. Here is her book. I'm blessed with an amazing family. Like, anybody reading that objectively would assume this was her family. I'm blessed with an amazing family. I'll never be able to thank Auntie Chris, Uncle Freddie, and Aunt Mary enough for their constant encouragement and support. They always showed up for me, as they did here at a campaign event for my DA's race that we held at the San Francisco Jazz Club. Jazz Club, get it? Haha, black people, you like jazz. There we are with my auntie and my uncles and my family. And she later in the book, there's like a little paragraph where she explains that actually Uncle Freddie and Aunt Mary are not her real uncles and are her real uncle and aunt at all, but they were just like family. But she doesn't say anything about that Aunt Chris she mentioned. She just says that Aunt Chris was the reason that she went to Howard. We don't know if it's a real aunt. Well, that we know for sure it's not a real aunt because all of these people are black. The point was just to make people just believe that she had this extraordinarily black experience. Even when she shows photos of her fully Indian grandparents, right, her mother's parents, she sort of gives it this little black spin, like this photo of her maternal grandfather in Africa. Of course, here it is. Grandpa and me when we visited him and my grandmother in Lusaka, Zambia, right? So again, yes, this man traveled. Yes, he was on diplomatic missions. Why did you decide to pick this photo in Africa? Because it's sending a signal. She's trying to blackify herself by every means, any means available to her. And she really has, by the way, kept up this charade since the book. In fact, yesterday, before our episode dropped, she made a poor decision to tweet this. She tweeted, "Growing up, our mother worked long hours. So my sister Maya and I would stay with our neighbor, Mrs. Shelton. She helped my mother take care of us, and we used to call her our second mother." So she has a black second mother. She's got a fake Uncle Freddie. She's got a fake Aunt Mary. She's got a fake Auntie Chris. It's just unbelievable. It's just really unbelievable. And yet all of these real white aunties and uncles were completely ignored. They just didn't make it. And we now know that she had real relationships with these people. So it's quite stunning. It is a lie by omission. Okay. It's a lie by omission when you're going around doing the rounds pretending to be black. The intended message was very clear. Of the book, it's I am black, I'm a Negro, accept me, everyone. See, I'm just like you guys. They ain't like us, she said. They ain't like us. The BET Awards. Girl, they ain't like us. No, Kamala, you ain't like us, okay? You ain't even kind of like us. In fact, you essentially spit in our faces when you do this. It is a minstrel show. Kamala's campaign is a minstrel show. If you are black and you are still voting for her, you should be ashamed of yourself. You have absolutely no dignity to allow this to happen, to have her get caught, and to basically turn the other cheek and go, oh, well, at least she's not Trump. Well, at least Trump is who Trump says he actually is. But of course, it was this photo that immediately caught our attention. It was the notorious photo of Grandma Beryl. Now, I want to be clear. When this photo caught my attention, I just didn't think it was her grandma because I didn't like the emotional vibes here. It's just not how Caribbean grandmas act. I know I have one or had one. She passed away in 2013. But what is interesting is that so many people had emailed us right away. And these people are obviously, I'm not a techie. They were familiar with Photoshop. A lot of editors saying, Candace, these photos are Photoshopped. You can tell because in each photo of her grandparents, this one and of Iris Finnegan, they don't show the hands. And apparently there is something to do with hands that you can tell that they're just photoshopping 2 pictures together. So the operating belief from the army of editors that have emailed us is that actually they took a real photo of Kamala and a real photo of this black woman, and they just merged them together. And that's why you're not seeing any emotion or interaction between the two. Like, I don't know, I just feel like your grandma would put your arm around her or something. But again, that's a theory. We didn't even report on it until just now because obviously yesterday we dropped the mother of all bombs, a woman named Dorothy who grew up on the island in the presence of the lovely Miss Beryl, who she loved dearly. Dorothy really loved Miss Beryl and was so kind about it, confirmed that the photo was fraudulent. And since we dropped that episode yesterday, it's been crazy. The reason why we're running a little bit late with today's episode is because we've had more phone calls with Kamala's family members. And they have confirmed to us beyond a shadow of a doubt that the person that is pictured in Kamala's book is not the real Miss Beryl. Kamala cannot sue me for that statement. She cannot sue me for defamation. That is not the real Miss Beryl. That is not her grandma Beryl that is in that photo, okay? In fact, this family member tells me that not only is the real Miss Beryl light-skinned, like Kamala, but also that Miss Beryl had a sister, okay, that was even whiter than her, even lighter than her. Now, my understanding is that Miss Beryl looked to be mixed Indian and Irish. So they would say brown, call Indians brown and Irish. So that's why when Dorothy recounts this, she's like, Kamala looks so much like her. Apparently, she was a little lighter than Kamala, but you would look at Kamala and you might go, okay, that complexion, you would definitely say, could identify that as someone with an Indian complexion, no doubt. And this is, by the way, how we now know definitively that Dorothy is on the money. We are in communication one step closer to getting in touch with Dorothy. We're trying to get her on the show because she also confirmed that Miss Beryl did indeed have another sister that she remembered. Take a listen.
Miss Beryl was a brown-skinned woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
That says it all.
In fact, I remember her sister.
Uh-huh.
I also remember her sister. But yes, remember, as I say, I have, you look back on things in your childhood, and Miss Beryl, I have very fond memories of going back from I was a child. Lovely, a lovely, kind woman that lived in this house with her son.
And the son that she is referring to is Kenneth. We're going to talk more about him because this piece is actually really important for those of you who have joined our CIA investigation, our army of people who are looking into this. But Dorothy also confirmed, remember, we were between two death certificates, one that was in 95 and one that was in 1960. Well, she confirmed that Beryl was indeed alive in the 90s and that she passed a short time before Dorothy's husband, who I believe she said her husband passed in 2000 or 2002. Take a listen.
So was Miss Beryl alive in 2000?
So she was alive in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Which was when I Tim and I were together. So she was definitely alive in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yes, yes.
That's really intriguing, Dorothy.
Yeah.
What a pity you don't have a photograph.
I know, but I am still sort of making inquiries to see if anybody, has a photograph of her.
Someone has a photograph of her. That person is likely Kamala Harris. We're just not going to get it, obviously. And they're probably now freaking out and trying to figure out who else is speaking that would have been familiar with Miss Beryl. As I said, we are one step closer to getting in touch with Dorothy because we have withheld information from the public that she clearly knows. So I know that Dorothy is the real deal. She knew Kenneth Harris. The reason I have kept sort of this enigma of Kenneth Harris is because it's been very difficult for us to find information on him. So now I'm going to open this up to the public, okay? Kenneth Harris is Donald Harris's full brother. Okay, so Kenneth Harris and Donald Harris have the same mother and they have the same father. He is Kamala's full uncle. And the reason why he is a person of tremendous interest to me is because, like Donald, there seems to be very little public information available about him. Now, I have told you that the family members that we are speaking to say that Donald was exceedingly private and Kenneth was exceedingly private as well. They were a bit mysterious. They have also confirmed to me that Donald was a full-fledged communist who attended frequent Marxist meetings and basically gave no information about himself ever. Okay, which is why it's of note that Dorothy says she didn't know Donald, but she definitely remembers Kenneth Harris. Take a listen.
I don't know her other son, who is Kamala's father. I know of him, but I have never met him. But of course, her other son, Uncle Kenneth, I have really loving, fun memories of him.
He lived in the village.
Yes, he lived with his mother.
And what became of him? Do you know?
He, as far as I know, he lives in America.
Okay.
Yes.
And Kamala's father.
Yes.
You didn't know.
I have never met him.
It's really funny that in Kamala's book, she speaks about how she was visiting her Uncle Freddie in Harlem, Because what I actually know, based on my research and what people are telling me, I can tell you this for a fact, is that Kenneth did indeed go to America. He went to New York. And then he virtually disappeared. So while she was at Harlem, she could have visited maybe her real uncle, Kenneth Harris, that she hasn't mentioned at all. But yes, I am now telling the public what we know about him. His name would be Kenneth Harris Sr., by the way. He has 3 children, and his son's name is Kenneth Harris Jr. My understanding is that after he went to America, after being quite private, he virtually disappeared. We also know about Kenneth Harris is that while he lived in Jamaica, he was a police officer. So we are trying to crawl through the database and see if we can find any information on him. Quite interestingly, every single family member that we've tried to look things up on, we've been able to find, except for Kenneth and Donald Harris. That is just remarkable to me. Every indication that I have leads me to believe that these two were working for the government. And I'm not talking about like just working for the government, like the fireman or the post office man. I'm talking about working for the state. Okay. Like in a very big way, and were required to be silent and mysterious about their lives. Again, Kenneth Harris moved to New York and then virtually disappeared and lost contact with everything, also exceedingly private. And I should be able to find his naturalization papers. I should be able to find way more about him, considering he moved to America and lives in America. And I keep coming up dry. So I am asking everyone who has been on this journey to get on this and just be conscious, by the way, that, you know, there are a lot of, obviously, Kenneth Harris is a very common sounding name. There are tons of common, you know, you could find a million of them. Try to make sure if you're sending me stuff that you're certain that this somehow relates to Jamaica, because that's where we know that he lived and that he had kids and that he was also married. And somehow there's no record of any of that I can find at this point, but we have the weekend ahead of us. I'd also like to, before the weekend, point out again to you a woman that I deem to be of interest. Now, we have nothing concrete about this woman. I'm simply bringing her to the public's attention again. Just a bit of a gut instinct. This photo of Lady Idris Allen. Her name was Idris Trotman. She married the finance minister of Bustamante. Like Beryl, this woman died in 1995 in Jamaica. She was exceedingly devoted to politics, and she ran a dry goods store and was a supporter, like I said, of Bustamante. The reason why she's been a person of interest to me is that she just kind of fits the bill of everything that Donald Harris speaks about in his Jamaican Online Global piece about his heritage, the dry goods store. It's almost like he's merged different people. And I also think that woman looks like a light-skinned woman that could be mixed. And so I just am deeming her a person of interest, trying to learn more about her. I just think the more public we are with this research, the more we will be able to discern what is right and what is wrong. She may have no relation whatsoever. But just when I think of this woman saying she looked like Kamala, I see the skin complexion, I see black hair, and I find her to be interesting. I should also, by the way, include for you guys here, but Donald has since been remarried, and his wife works for the World Bank. He is just a very, very mysterious, shady dude. It leads me to believe that Japanese American journalist, Yoichi Shimatsu, may have been telling the truth. And I have some news. We have been able to establish communication with Yoichi Shimatsu, and he is a willing participant. So we are going to have, by the way, a ton of surprises next week. I'm trying to set up an interview with Yoichi, also somebody else that I'm going to wait and surprise you with next week that you guys are going to be thrilled about, people that have real memories and real knowledge of this very mysterious family. And so we're not going to let up, guys. If you have information, especially if you are in Jamaica, please share this around. Somebody remembers something. We have to be able to find something about Beryl. Was she using a different name? Who was her sister? You can't just own a store and just completely have no record of your time there. And like I said, it sounds like they had a little bit of wealth. And the only people that could clean up someone's background like this would be a 3-lettered government agency. And so, we are going to have to be quicker than them. And that seems almost impossible. But I think with the entire world now watching and paying attention, it maybe is possible. And with the entire world now looking at Yoichi Shimatsu's piece, his belief. He is certain that Kamala's mom was involved in the MK Ultra program, and that is about psychological brainwashing people. Might be something that could lead to a Manchurian type candidate. I am thinking that everything that he is expressing, particularly about Kamala, her past marriage, probably has a lot of merit to it, but we are going to find out, guys. So, of course, stay tuned. All right, I want to throw it to preborn because the media has dubbed this the abortion election. We have to stand up.
That she thought it was great. She thought it was great to say.
Coming up in this episode.
That's what I call discipline. I love it. And you know,
She just said she loved it and she thought it was great. She thought it was great to say I'm disciplined. That's why I bring up my stump speech when you ask me anything. That's why I keep talking about my goddamn house where my mom raised us and a lady that lived down the street. As if anybody gives a flying about it. Charlamagne the God had a guest, a friend of his, Kamala Harris, came through. They had a conversation. He asked a couple questions. She pretended to answer them. So let's take a look.
But doesn't the Biden administration have to take some blame for the border, though? A lot of the blame? Because, I mean, the first 3 years, y'all did get a lot of things wrong with the border.
No, Charlamagne, within hours of being inaugurated, the first bill we passed before we did the Inflation Reduction Act, before we did the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, before we did the Safer Communities Act to deal with gun violence, first thing we dropped was a bill to fix the broken immigration system.
And yeah, so look, guys, for those that don't know, for those of you that don't know, the border was basically more secure than it's been in a long time. Okay. And that was because Donald Trump was able to implement some executive orders. He signed like some 90 executive orders. I think about 20 of them had to do with the border. And when Joe Biden entered office, he turned them all down. Yeah, he cut down all the executive orders that Trump had put in place. And one of those executive orders, particularly, had stopped unlawful or illegal entrance of undocumented immigrants to cross the border and wait for the asylum hearings. And that was an important order because those people were waiting in Mexico or they were waiting south of the border. And when Biden cut that executive order off, all those people came across the border. And because there was no executive order to stop them, we just took their name down and said, okay, fine. And we'll send you paperwork for your hearing. And all those people flooded the border. Folks, I want people to understand this. More people crossed the border during this time of the Biden and Harris administration than any other administration that I could see since Reagan. I don't even know. I mean, that's as far back as the chart went. I'm not saying that Reagan let more people in. I'm saying that's as far as the chart went. Okay, when I looked at the chart, more people crossed the border under Harris and Biden than anybody else. More people crossed the border in these 3 years or 4 years under Biden and Harris than 8 years under Obama. Okay? That's what I'm talking about, fam. So some people say 6 million, some people say 10 million, some people say more. She won't answer the question, but it's a damn good question, and it's a question you should answer if you want to be president of the United States. Let's go to the next question. Next question. Is this reparations? Let's go to reparations, guys. Let's get the big one out the way.
off the backs of free Black labor. My question to you is, what's your stance on reparations? We all know that America became great, off the backs of free Black labor. How progressive are you on making it a priority and righting America's wrongs? It's understood that you are running for president for all people of America. Asking for specifics for Black communities doesn't mean don't do for others, but Black Americans are heavily asked to vote Democrat in every election for over half a century with very little in return. What are your plans to address these very important issues and change that narrative? Thank you, Zeke.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your work. So to your point, yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position. In terms of my immediate plan, I will tell you a few of the following. One, as it relates to the economy, which is a lot of what you have addressed. Look, I grew up in the middle class. My mother, worked hard, raised me and my sister. And by the time I was in high school.
All right, that's it. She won't answer the question.
What a joke, bro. What a joke.
Folks, the level of disrespect is
I grew up in
demonstrated here by Kamala.
damn lie. Your mother
I can't stress enough how disgusting it is. Here's the deal, guys. Kamala Harris does not support reparations. She supports looking like she supports reparations. Because a person that supported reparations would say, I support reparations so much, I'm going to sign an executive order that will appoint a commission to study it. Because that a president can do. It doesn't put money in anyone's pocket, but it's a step forward. What she said at the National Association of Black Journalists was she would not sign that by executive order. She would not put together a commission on her own. So basically, she doesn't support it. She said she supported it because that's what you got to do to make people think you support it. So that people, when they ask you, you can say, hey, I support Black people. But you really don't. Here's the deal, guys. I prefer for a person to tell me the truth than to lie to my ass. Kamala is a liar. She tells people that she supports a process or a piece of legislation that she doesn't support. Look, I support reparations. I damn sure support a study. A study should have happened 20 years ago. The fact that we're still talking about studying this is stupid.
They study,
but okay.
Study. What a joke.
That's the least you could do is study it. You should have been did that. No one told the Israel people, oh, we should look into it. We'll get to it. We'll take a look. No one told the Native Americans, oh, we'll look into it. We'll get to it. Let's think about it. No one told the Asian folks, the people held in internment camps, oh, we'll look into it. We'll see what we can do about looking into it. They're telling Black people, we'll see what we can do about looking into it. And by the way, guys, we ain't just talking about slavery. We talking about Jim Crow. Jim Crow, that whole time when Black people didn't have rights in America, basically, like up until like 65, 1970 or so, that entire time. So it's not just slavery. Because we know a lot of the cowardly people that happen to be African-American too, don't want to tell the truth because they want to keep their white audiences. I say, if I got an audience member that's got a problem with me running recourse for my people, when meanwhile they come from a group of people that got recourse for their own issues, I don't want them. I don't want anybody who doesn't respect me to care about what happens to me and my kids. You care about your kids, don't you? If somebody owes you $50, some of you guys will be out in the street ready to knock somebody's head in. How could you respect a Black man in America who doesn't respect himself enough to say, hey, my dad should have got that, my granddad should have got his GI Bill? How could you even respect him? How could you say that you respect them as men and women if they won't do that because they're afraid of your backlash? So Kamala Harris is a phony. And once again, if someone really doesn't support it, I'd rather they be honest. Admit where you stand. That's all. Admit where you are, Kamala Harris. Admit it. Tell the truth about who you are and what you stand for. Nobody hates, very few things that you hate more than a liar. All right, let's keep going, guys. Kamala Harris. But let's see what this one is. I forget which one this one is.
Can we just say it? Yes, we can say it. You have two choices, or you don't vote, but you have two choices if you do. And it's two very different visions for our nation. One mind that is about taking us forward and progress and investing in the American people, investing in their ambitions, dealing with their challenges. And the other, Donald Trump, is about taking us backward.
The other is about fascism. Why can't we just say it?
Yes, we can say that.
Charlemagne.
Yeah, how about we not say it because it's stupid? I think that both parties have some fascist tendencies to them. It's not just one person. A dictatorial leader. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that applies to the Democrats as well. I feel like that's how we get treated.
If Trump was a fascist, he wouldn't be indicted. His home wouldn't be raided. That's why people are so stupid. They don't even know what fascism is, bro. When you're a dictator, you don't get your home raided. You don't be arrested. You can't. No, that's what a fascist does to their enemies. Lock them up, arrest them. See, they know the American people do not understand what they're saying. Charlemagne think he's slick. He's just a fascist. Well, how the hell he keep going to jail? What fascist leader? Come on, man.
We get treated like they're the boss and we're the worker bees. I don't really see a difference between how the parties operate. I really don't. That's why we call it the uniparty. Subordination of individual interests for the perceived good of the nation or race. Yeah, you don't think it's fascistic to try to make everyone agree with certain lifestyles or certain belief systems that other people's have? That's not fascist? That you want to change my language, that I have to mold it, or I'm a bad person, I'm a horrible individual? Like, dude, I grew up not using all these pronouns and shit. If I don't use them correctly, I'm labeled all types of horrible things, but I could care less how you spend your time or whatever you do. Be happy, man. But you want to control my language and change it and make it conform to something because you want it to be a certain way. And you say that's for the good of the country. That's what you say. That's not fascism? What do you call a president who drops bombs on innocent people besides war criminal? What do you call a president that does extrajudicial killings by the way of drone on U.S. citizens without trials? Would that be considered dictatorial? Obama did those things. But she would never call him fascist. You don't think that's a fascist belief? I think it is. Let's keep going, guys. I think I got one more.
One thing they've been saying, a lot of your press hits get criticized. You know, folks say you come off as very scripted. They say you like to stick to your talking points. And some media says you have...
That would be called discipline.
Oh, okay. Speak to that.
But go on.
No, I was going to say, some people say you have an inability to fearlessly say who you are and what you believe. I know that's not true. But what do you say to that criticism? And is it fair for SNL to make fun of it?
Hasn't Maya Rudolph been wonderful?
Yes.
I think I have nothing but admiration for the comedy, and I think it's important to be able to laugh at yourself and each other.
But what do you say to people
in
who
the,
say
in the spirit of obviously comedy and
Yes.
not belittling people as my opponent would do?
But what do you say to people who say you stay on the talking points?
When they say that you are scripted, they don't mean you stay consistent in your speaking about certain issues. They mean when we ask you a question that's totally unrelated to your stump speech, you go back to the stump speech, sister. That's not the same thing. And Charlemagne, once again, being a hack, you want to articulate the difference. Because you know damn well that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about one potato, two potato. We're not talking about memorizing the planets. We're talking about when we ask you a question and you run all the way down the block, all the way down the street, round the corner, stop by the 7-Eleven, stop by the 5 and Dime, stop by the grocery store, pick up a couple things, stop by the deli, grab a couple sandwiches, stop by the bakery, blah, 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 all to come back and tell us the same tired stump stuff when it doesn't even apply. That's the problem. That's disgusting hackery and also word salad. That's not a bonus. That's that good. That's that consistency. That's that discipline. Unless you consider being a hacker discipline, being a obfuscator, being a cover-upper, being a dishonest person. That's what you're doing. You're avoiding criticism. And you're scheming and plotting to avoid answering. That's not good. Here goes a clip from CNN. Bakari Sellers was with Abby Phillip, and they had a conversation here. And I just put this in because it's the same topic, and I just want to let Bakari know that we saw how corny he is.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't couch it as a friendly interview, or I mean, I think you have to look at the substance of the question.
I mean, Abby says that the interview that Kamala had with Charlemagne was a friendly interview, and Bakari is going to deny it.
Feel like they can trust her.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't couch it as a friendly interview, or I mean, I think you have to look at the substance of the
He
question.
literally endorsed her, so I think
but
that is described as a friendly interview.
Respectfully, it was substantive, right? And I think that, and I think it's very substantive. I think that her answers were thoughtful. I thought that she got off talking points. Even Charlemagne at one point said, how do you feel about people who say that you stick to your talking points? And she said, that's what I call discipline.
I love
and
She just said she loved it and she thought it was great. She thought it was great to say I'm disciplined. That's why I bring up my stump speech when you ask me anything. That's why I keep talking about my goddamn house where my mom raised us and a lady that lived down the street. As if anybody gives a flying bunch of hacks, lazy, lame hacks, and make black people look horrible. Yeah. Yes. I'm going to need you to go get Bakari's goddamn black card. And whoever this woman is with this straight hair, get her shit too. Take it immediately. Yeah, her. It's on the screen. Go get her damn black card. If I don't have her black card by the end of the day, you're fired. I wish I had such powers, but then I'd be a fascist.
That's what I call discipline.
I love it.
And you just kind of go through that. It was a clear contrast. But even more importantly, when we talk about her going to Charlemagne and speaking directly to voters, and you just kind of go through that. It was a
Lord have mercy, Johnson. Oh, that's it. Hey, folks. The hackery of the crackery is on display, man. I got no more words for it, guys. It was horrible. It was pathetic. Charlemagne the guy, you should be ashamed of yourself. But I guess if you stood up for anything, you wouldn't be Charlemagne. You used to be Leonard, the guy who used to have a radio show. Because the Democrats have made it very clear that anybody that gets out of line goes night-night. So, but it's still pathetic what you did. It was a horrible interview. And no, I haven't heard the whole thing, but what I heard was bad. When Kamala loses, part of the reason why she's going to lose is because of shit like this. Because you can't cheat your way into this. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comments.
The situation in the Middle East continues to be tense. Amid the ongoing bloody clashes in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon, the Israeli authorities have not yet made a final decision on a retaliatory strike against Iran. Many influential news agencies have also confirmed this fact. In particular, the Bloomberg news agency, citing its own sources in the Israeli government, stated that Israel, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has not yet made a final decision on exactly what Tel Aviv's response will be to the massive Iranian missile attack that took place on October 1st. Even though it has been more than 2 weeks since Iran's unprecedented massive missile attack on Israel, the world's media is still showing great interest in this topic. They are still wondering when and how exactly Israel will respond to this audacious Iranian missile attack, which hit dozens of military installations on the territory of the Jewish state. The world expert community also continues to actively discuss the upcoming Israel's retaliation strike against Iran. Many experts and analysts are confident that Iran's nuclear industry will be the main target of the forthcoming Israeli strikes. Let me remind you that since the 70s of the last century, Israel has been diligently fighting against all the attempts by Arab countries to build their own nuclear facilities. Iraq became the first state in the Middle East to be attacked by Israel because of the desire of the government of that country to have its own nuclear power plant at its disposal. In June 1981, the Israeli Air Force attacked the Osirak nuclear reactor in central Iraq. As a result of this military operation, Iraq lost its nuclear program forever. Over the following decades, Israel also attacked the nuclear facilities of other Arab states. For example, in 2000, Israel managed to destroy a nuclear facility in the Syrian province of Deir Zor. In addition, Israeli intelligence agencies regularly physically eliminated nuclear scientists, who helped Arab countries in their quest to create their own nuclear program. Since the 80s of the last century, Israel has eliminated dozens of scientists, who worked for the governments of many Arab states. However, unfortunately for Israel, unlike the Arab states, Iran turned out to be a tough nut. Despite Israel's best efforts, Tel Aviv has failed to deprive Iran of its scientific base for the creation of not only nuclear facilities, but also nuclear weapons. The fact is that Iran pays great attention to the security of its nuclear facilities. The entire Iranian nuclear industry is being built with maximum protection. Iran's most important nuclear facilities are even buried deep underground. Against this backdrop, Israel is well aware that with the help of conventional bombing, it will not be possible to deprive Iran of its nuclear industry. Moreover, despite severe Western sanctions and constant Israeli attacks, Iran has also managed to create a powerful missile program. This has allowed Iran to become one of the world leaders in the creation of ballistic missiles and attack drones. Against this backdrop, the Israeli authorities are well aware that Iran is the only country in the Middle East that is capable of wiping Israel off the face of the earth. In this regard, the military and political leadership of Israel has a very strong determination to fight and not give up. According to the Israeli authorities, for the sake of Israel's security, Iran should lose not only its nuclear program, but also its missile program. However, to achieve this goal, Israel needs a brief victorious war with the participation of the United States and its allies. And everything that is happening in the Middle East now indicates that the United States and Israel are indeed carefully planning not only a retaliatory strike, but also a future war with Iran. Against this backdrop, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araqi officially stated that those countries that help Israel plan a future attack on Iran will become legitimate targets for the Iranian army. The Iranian foreign minister also commented on the words of US President Joe Biden. On Friday, while in Germany, Joe Biden said that he knows how and when Israel will attack Iran. At the same time, the US president refused to go into details. Thus, the owner of the White House confirmed that Israel has finally made a final decision on a retaliatory strike against Iran. According to the Iranian foreign minister, if the United States and its allies really know how and when Israel will attack Iran, providing Tel Aviv with funds and support for such stupidity, then Tehran will hold all these countries accountable for their actions. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin finally commented on the situation in the Middle East. According to him, Iran is an ally of Russia, while Moscow has very good and trusting relations with Israel. Vladimir Putin stressed that Russia is ready to make every effort to resolve the conflict between Iran and Israel. The fact that Putin called Iran an ally of Russia indicates that Moscow will not allow Tehran to be defeated in the event of an attack by Israel and the United States on Iran. Moreover, Russia is even ready to support Iran from a military point of view in the event of a war in the Middle East. In particular, Iranian ambassador to Russia Kazem Jalali officially announced that during the upcoming visit of the Iranian president to Moscow, Vladimir Putin and Masoud Pezeshkian will sign an agreement on a comprehensive strategic partnership between Russia and Iran. Earlier, Vladimir Putin signed a similar agreement with North Korea. Thus, against the backdrop of threats from Israel and the United States to attack Iran, Tehran has received a powerful ally, who will come to the rescue in the event of a war in the Middle East. In this regard, particular attention should be paid to the words of Brigadier General of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Ibrahim Rostami. In particular, on October 16, 2024, he officially announced that Iran has weapons more powerful than nuclear bombs. Our enemies are in a state of shock. We are using the potential of our country by 100%. And that's why we have unlimited power, Brigadier General Ibrahim Rostami said. Commenting on the words of the Iranian general, an authoritative military expert and journalist Murat Karalan expressed confidence that Russia had transferred to Iran an analog of the world's most powerful non-nuclear bomb ODAB 9000, the characteristics of which are still classified. The expert made this statement referring to his own sources in the Russian military department. According to him, Russia has supplied its main ally in the Middle East with this secret bomb to maintain the balance of power in this region of the world. He also expressed confidence that Iran has the necessary means of delivering this powerful bomb. According to him, Russia will never allow Iran's defeat in the Middle East. In this regard, Moscow is ready to transfer even its secret technologies to Iran, in order to deter Israel and the United States.
To the Middle East now, where overnight it appears that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's private home was the target of a drone attack, and there are growing concerns today about the fate of the hostages.
Now, the reason that's so serious that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's home was bombed by a drone, destroyed, they couldn't stop the drone. Remember, the U.S. just sent a new air defense THAAD system over there 2 days ago. THAAD, why didn't you stop the drone? Because THAAD systems don't stop drones. They stop ballistic missiles. Well, then the Iranians and Hezbollah would just destroy them with drones. And they say they will. They all plan on assassinating Benjamin Netanyahu. He will never be safe in the state of Israel ever again.
Just still being held by Hamas in Gaza after Israel killed the notorious head of the terror group there earlier this week. NBC's Hala Garbani has the very latest from Tel Aviv this morning. Hala, good morning.
Good morning, Peter. Yes, indeed, there was a drone attack targeting the residence of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Caesarea. It hit a structure nearby this morning, but no casualties were reported. And Netanyahu and his wife were not home at the time, according to the Prime Minister's
Where was they hiding out? What bunker was they in? They looking for Netanyahu.
Office. But meantime, in northern Gaza, there have been more heavy strikes. Video from the besieged enclave showing the aftermath of intense Israeli attack.
And I want to always show you, they don't want to show you the destruction of Israel, but they will show you this murder, humiliation porn on TV. This is to humiliate these people. Well, why don't you show us what happened to Benjamin Netanyahu and his home as it was attacked? No, that's classified.
There, at least 30 people were killed in the Jabalia refugee camp, including 21 women and children.
Women and children. Yeah, this video, man. I don't got time for this video. But we need to know more about Benjamin Netanyahu having to run for his life as his home was destroyed. You know, that's not good that Hezbollah can destroy your home, Mr. Netanyahu. Maybe you have to go back to Poland.
Who has accused Hezbollah of trying to assassinate him. That's after a drone targeted his holiday home. Netanyahu said the Iran-backed group had made...
Well, hold on, wait a minute. You mean the Prime Minister of Israel not safe? Well, how are any of the settlers, the invaders, the colonial racist bigots, how would they ever be safe if the prime minister not safe? You mean to tell me he got to live underground in a bunker? Now he don't get good rest above ground? Nope.
A grave mistake. The drone was part of a wave of attacks launched by Hezbollah into northern Israel that left one person dead and put the region even more on edge.
Wait a minute. Somebody dead? I thought the other news station just said there was no casualties. Oh, well, I don't know what's going on here. But you mean to tell me it's one? I heard it was several. And I heard several other people were wounded severely. And I heard the prime minister's home was destroyed.
A familiar sound in the northern city of Haifa. The Israeli army says Hezbollah launched some 180 missiles in separate barrages. Most were taken out by Israel's Iron Dome air defense system, but not all.
Look at that humiliation.
We're here in Kiryat Tata, where a rocket has landed in an attempt to hit citizens of Israel.
That's a lie.
There are civilians here, among them the elderly, children, and others.
The elderly, children, and others is who you killing in Gaza. You look like you part of the military. Hezbollah looking for you. But one thing about Israel is every citizen 17 or older have to serve in the military. Unless you're a child. You see, that's one thing about this situation. Any building you hit in Israel, you actually hitting soldiers because everybody's part of the military. You're 60 years old, they all still in the damn military. That's what you fight, you're attacking innocent people. That's a lie. They struck Benjamin Netanyahu home. That's crazy. That's like waking up and Joe Biden's home was blown up. That'd be Putin's home blown up. Well, that's what happened in Israel today. And they really trying to keep the lid on this story because it shames them, especially since the U.S. just sent their powerful THAAD missile system and they couldn't stop a drone.
Now, thankfully, the residents listened to the instructions and went to the shelters. 9 people suffered light injuries.
As well as
Broken
missiles,
drums.
Israel says the militant group sent drones into their territory, one of which targeted a holiday home owned by Benjamin Netanyahu in the coastal town of Caesarea. Neither he nor his wife were there at the time, but the Prime Minister called it an assassination attempt and said that Israel would not be deterred. Local residents were shaken by the attack.
I feel, as a resident, unsafe like I've never felt before in Israel.
It was troublesome, but then this is not the first time. They've had some success with the drones hitting us without sirens, low flying, and it's something that we're going to have to learn to deal with going ahead.
You see, it's some good news and some bad news for Israel. The good news is y'all have killed the leader of Hamas, y'all killed the leader of Hezbollah, y'all killed a lot of their commanders. That's the good news. The bad news is all of their fighters still want to fight you. They're not worried about their leaders dying. The war continues. That's the bad news for y'all.
Israel, in turn, carried out airstrikes in Lebanon. Some hit Beirut's densely populated southern suburbs, where it says it struck Hezbollah weapons facilities and a command center. Others struck a vehicle on a highway north of the capital. And others targeted villages in the southern border region, where Israeli forces say Hezbollah is active.
I don't think it's safe in this area because as long as displaced people from the south are coming in, they will be targeted by Israel.
Both sides have pledged to keep on fighting. Israeli authorities say they are investigating the Hezbollah drone and missile strikes in the north. But Hezbollah's increasing ability to evade the Iron Dome air defense system will be a cause of concern for many people here.
Journalist Bali Sladin in Tel Aviv had the latest on Hezbollah strikes into northern Israel.
Propaganda, bro. Shut up. You look like you was hiding out in a bunker. Your goddamn self. Where the hell is Benjamin Netanyahu? Hezbollah came looking for him, but he wasn't home. You can't go back home. They blew your house up, bro. That's crazy, man. I hope you didn't have any family error, any stuff that can't be replaced. I hope everything replaced.
We're now being joined by Daniel Levy from London. Daniel is the president of the US Middle East Project. Daniel, first up, what's the first thought that comes to mind, especially after what we heard after the statement from Ayatollah Khamenei that Hamas is still alive? What is the first thought, of course, that comes to mind?
Well, of course, anyone who thinks that a popular resistance movement based not on the appeal of an individual leader, but based on the conditions under which its people live, anyone that thinks such movements can be defeated has not been paying attention, not in Palestine, and not in history, and not across the world. This is not how such situations end. When you have a system of structural violence where people are denied their rights, there will always be resistance. If there's no political solution, then there will always be armed resistance. In the very immediate term, what this tells us is that the thinking in September, perhaps, that with the assassination of Nasrallah and other senior commanders, with the mass maiming event of the pagers and walkie-talkies, that Hezbollah was decimated. This has also proven to be a fantasy. Yes, degraded, but incapacitated. No, it has the drones, it has the missiles, and it has the fighters on the ground, which is why we see extremely slow progress being made by the Israeli ground incursion. And Hamas will also not be defeated with the death of Mr. Sinwar.
Daniel, I want you to speak a little about the nature of the attack. We were just talking to our correspondent, Jody, who said, of course, the Prime Minister is mostly in Jerusalem, where he lives for the most part of the year. However, this attack targeted the Prime Minister of Israel. So isn't there a bit of a contradiction? You think if they were so aware of the precision of these drone attacks, they could have attacked his residence in Jerusalem? Or they could have better intel on whether or not he was at home?
Well, you're assuming that the exclusive intent of such an attack, and I can't speak to the intent of those who launched the drones. These are not people I am in communication with, as you can imagine. But you are assuming that the exclusive intent was to kill an individual rather than to demonstrate capacity and accuracy and to reinsert some deterrence and remind people that that capacity exists. I don't think taking out, you see, this is the thing, we get locked into this mindset that you remove someone, the head of a regime, the head of a militant group, and somehow this solves the problem. There are many other things going on here. And therefore, what I think is significant here is this question of, can you hermetically secure yourself? And the answer is no, because if it's not a drone, a technology which we wouldn't have expected to play such a prominent role just a few years ago, then it will be something else. There's no such thing as 100% security, which is why you always need political solutions. So right now we see what the vulnerabilities are. Israel is extreme.
Iran is the king of the drones. Iran is a drone superpower. They in trouble fucking with Iran and them drones.
Dependent on the US. The US has now posted its THAAD missiles, another layer of defense inside Israel. But there will not be hermetic security. There will only be political solutions. Those mean compromises. Those mean accepting that other people have rights. And that is where Israel is so stuck. Because Israel
missile systems stop ballistic missiles. This is a hybrid war. Drone warfare is new. The U.S. and Israel have to create an air defense system for drone warfare, and they're not going to be able to do that in this war. It's just their ass. They got the wrong weapons for this war.
Israel can score battlefield successes. Of course it can, just like it will take battlefield hits, but it can't achieve a sustainable situation for its own security unless it has a political vision, and it doesn't have one. That's its big problem.
Daniel, would you say that Israel's Iron Dome has been pierced again? And what are the implications and the reach of these drone attacks?
Yeah, you're right to point this out, because there are several things going on here. One of which is not just for Israel, but for countries who have decided that Israel is a great partner for weapons testing. It can test those on the civilian Palestinian population. It's a good partner for technology. It has a strong high-tech industry to use weapons tech, AI weapons, robotics, automated weapons. So there's also a bit of a showroom display. That sounds callous. It is callous going on here, which is this working? What are the vulnerabilities of that? And sure, we see some impressive technology, but we also see that it can be circumvented. And what we're seeing is something of a closing of the qualitative edge gap. Israel has tremendous destructive capacity. We've seen that in the devastation in Gaza, the killing of 42,000 plus civilians. We don't know how many more are under the rubble, 16,000 children. The devastation of schools, hospitals, everything destroyed. But what we don't see is a military solution to everything, again, because there isn't one. And so those who are doing this close military cooperation with Israel might want to ask themselves whether this is such a great plan.
Daniel, you were earlier talking about the intent, and you say the intent doesn't always have to be to take out someone. Instead, it can just be about sending a message. Then how do you compare and contrast it with the elimination of several high-profile persons in the axis of resistance?
How stupid of a question was that? What Hezbollah just shown is, if our leaders is not safe, then your leaders is not safe. Forget about the people who been bombed. Netanyahu's home was just destroyed. It was a military display of power. If their leaders is going to be in bunkers, then the Israeli leaders going to live underground from now on.
Yeah, I think you have to take a step back. If you are one of the leaders of an armed resistance movement, it's kind of in your job description that you expect to die a so-called martyr's death. And I think if we look at the case of Sinwar in particular, This is not a man who had his pension plan and his retirement home ready, where he was going to spend his dotage with his grandchildren. He actually broadcast this. He fully expected, and the movement fully expected, that this was the kind of end he would meet. In fact, it's very interesting. Israel released this footage.
That's why we respect Fred Hampton and Malcolm X over, and even Martin over anybody, any of our leaders, because they died in the fight. Those are our martyrs. That's why they revered all over the world Malcolm, Fred Hampton, because they died in the fight. You know, they kept their honor intact. You know, they died never selling out. You know, that you get a hero's embrace, you know, forever for that type of work. You see what I'm saying? And that's something a lot of people, you know, even in the nation, they know they hate that about Malcolm. You know, they wish Farrakhan would have had that. But hey, you live to be 90-something years old. It's just truthful. The revolutionary would just look at you sideways because you didn't die in a fight. Now, that's not his problem. People, you want to be old. But in the fight, when you say that you're fighting against the great Satans, they don't know how you get that old if the great Satans is trying to kill you.
Thinking that it would somehow show weakness of the last moments of Yahya Sinwar. But he is now being lionized, understandably in the context of what a popular resistance movement looks like and what has been done to Gaza, whatever crimes he committed. And just like Netanyahu, Sinwar has a request for an arrest warrant for war crimes from the ICC, the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor. But there is now a mythology, a martyrology around this moment, around this person. And that's the mindset that, if I can say this, a Western colonial brain has a real difficulty computing what it is to be an oppressed people who look to heroic leaders, not perfect leaders, leaders who can commit crimes. And they don't understand that this is not some terrorist head of the snake. You take them out and you solved your problem.
Daniel, how long do you expect this tit for tat of sorts to go on for?
It's not tit for tat. I think we have to be very clear. This is not a war against Hamas or Sinwar or Hezbollah. This is a war against the Palestinian people. That is why there is total destruction. Not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. This war didn't begin on October 7th. Israel has been in illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories for decades. The International Court of Justice has designated this as an apartheid regime and an illegal occupation. Israel has been displacing and ethnically cleansing Palestinians for decades. That is why we see all the time these pictures of refugee camps. Why are they in refugee camps? Because they're not allowed to return to their homes. So this is a very intense period in an ongoing campaign. But even the intense period, I fear, is going to be with us for some time, because that's where you have to also go into what's going on politically in Israel, Netanyahu's coalition, Netanyahu's own personal political survival, and of course the role that the US plays in supporting this, in not using its leverage to end this, and therefore it's America's war, just as it is Israel's war.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel Levy, for joining us on the broadcast.
You salute to our brother Vincent Brown Scott for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute. Yeah, absolutely. His house got blown up. All of them gonna get blown up. They didn't already said they're not gonna, and they're not gonna allow Netanyahu to. He assassinated their leaders. He got to go. He's not gonna stay in that land. And I can guarantee you, this gonna end with the collapse of Israel unless they immediately sign peace agreements. The Palestinians got millions of leaders. Right now the leader is Sinwar's older brother, who they say is more vicious than he was. Israel don't have enough time to say they're going to kill everybody who say they're the leader, or everybody who say the leader of Hezbollah. I mean, they could get a new leader. For years, they can do this. And then you still got Iran, the big dog. On Israel, the time is at hand for them.
Right, so Israel's biggest boogeyman, the man they feared more than anyone else, Yahya Sinwar.
But they might whack Netanyahu and clean and call it even. I'm talking about the West. Right now, I'm talking about Britain, France, the US. They might just go ahead, and that little drone strike on that house, that might be the first step, or they're going to just say Hezbollah whacked them. And then they're going to sign a peace agreement. We might be looking for that, looking towards that.
The leader of Hamas is dead, and we're told this is a great victory. that we should not mourn this man, where in Israel they broke out into spontaneous celebration. But their cheers ought to be more muted, quite frankly. And for Western leaders telling us what good news this is, that might be what they're saying on the face of it at least, but behind closed doors, this course of events has both blindsided them and put them in an extremely difficult situation. Where they now see Hamas as finished, Palestinian resistance in the Gaza Strip crushed, it presents them with a massive Benjamin Netanyahu-shaped problem. This was supposed to be the end game for Israel going into Gaza after the night of October 7th, after all. This was the basis for Western Zionists to support Israel's military action against people they already oppress, disgusting the general public from the off around the world and sending polling figures and support for various governments, not least ours here in the UK, tumbling, both the Tories of Rishi Sunak before and Keir Starmer now. This should now be over then. All the warfare should end. That is what our leaders told us would happen. Except they've given Netanyahu too much free rein for too long, and he's not even going to pause for breath now. Good luck justifying support for that going forwards. Right, so Yahya Sinwar, leader of Hamas, the sole leader of Hamas since Israel assassinated his co-leader and leader of the ceasefire talks and negotiations on behalf of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran back in July, which of course prompted that most recent retaliation by Iran, of course, that military strike they conducted, has been killed in Rafah after being accidentally discovered by a routine Israeli patrol. Such, it seems, is Israel's fear of this man that they apparently turned a tank on him just to make sure they got him. This was supposed to be the end of the warfare in the region now, though, wasn't it? Hamas seemingly crushed. But it won't be. If anything, this course of action will just harden the resolve of those left. The IDF soldiers who happened upon Sinwar probably couldn't believe their luck, armed as they were.
He could have been, and that's what I've been pondering this. I've been pondering this all day long. I thought about this like he could have been underground. That's the leader of Hamas, the fighting wing. But when the political leader got killed in Iran, he became the total leader. He could have been underground, where the weapons are stored, where they got the hostages. They got plenty of hostages, and one of them is an Israeli general. This dude was in army fatigues on the front line, just getting it in. He just was one of the days he decided to fight with the crew and he got caught slipping. So what? But he a martyr, and it shamed all other leaders. Now everybody who say they a leader of one of these groups, you're going to have to be on the front line or you're not going to be looked at like a real leader.
Against him, wounded. He was there wearing a keffiyeh with nothing more than a stick to defend himself, apparently. He threw it at a drone in one last act of defiance before he was finished off by the IDF. Resistance to the very end is the message that has sent out. The images of his body lying in a partially demolished house as Israel basically chose to take him out rather than arrest him, as such a situation would surely demand, has obviously resonated. It is therefore a political headache for Benjamin Netanyahu that this is how it went down. That these are the images the world has seen. He would, I'm sure, have much preferred to have found Sinwar cowering behind Israel.
And what did Hezbollah do the next day? Blew up Benjamin Netanyahu's house. You only got to celebrate for one day till they blew his house up. That Hezbollah, you killed the leader of Hamas. Hezbollah say, remember us, and blew Benjamin Netanyahu's house up to remind him, you next.
Israeli refugees being used as human shields. But nothing of the sort was true, and they can't even spin as much of a narrative now as no doubt they would have done if those images hadn't gone out. Israel would have preferred anything, frankly, than the manner by which Sinwar went down to become public knowledge, because just as it was no more true that Hamas were using Israeli refugees as human shields, it was also not true that Hamas's leaders were hiding in tunnels, which was the justification for why so many buildings in Gaza were leveled by the IDF. The hospitals, the schools, the churches, the mosques, because they were where Hamas were hiding, apparently. These were their bases, we were told. Sinwar went down in the one way Israel has determined none of the Hamas leaders ever did: fighting. As much as people can rightfully question at times the motives and methods of Hamas committing condemnable acts in and of themselves, the very seizure of hostages on October 7th, a war crime as an obvious, for instance, and an overly promoted one by the mainstream media, biased as they have been, but the disproportionate response by Israel that they don't talk about so much opened the eyes of the world to the reality of Israeli occupation. It hasn't been going on since October 7th. It has been going on for decades, right back to the Nakba of 1948, to the Six-Day War of 1967, which has had Palestine held under Israeli occupation ever since. For all the stories will have been told about Sinwar, He was shaped by all of that, as so many Palestinians have been. He was 5 years old when the Israeli occupation began in 1967. He's known nothing else really, like so many. 3 generations of Palestinians who have never been free of Israeli control. So if you wonder why they resist to the lengths, whether you agree with them or not, that they go to, you really shouldn't if you've been paying attention to the last year of atrocity and realize it's been going on for far, far longer than that. And if you're also wondering why so many are grieving Sinwar's death, why so many have sung his praises, he was the figurehead for resisting all of that. Can you imagine grieving any of our leaders the way Sinwar's loss is being mourned? That in and of itself should be very telling of what he meant to people living under occupation. And whilst Israel may jeer at it and celebrate his death instead, when you realize Sinwar was a symbol for opposing that, as all of us are opposing Israeli atrocity, unless you are the most hardened and far gone of Zionists, of course, you can kind of put yourself in the mindset many Palestinians will have right now. But this is supposed to now be the end, isn't it, right? Israel's won. It's achieved what it set out to do, hasn't it? Hamas's leaders are all gone. Time to pack up and go home. This is what we were told would happen, wasn't it? Well, such is the problem for the West now, as this is how they sold their support for Israel to us, the public, long before we really saw the reality of the genocide, the first genocide in history to be played out in real time before all of our eyes via our computers and our laptops and our mobile devices, as social media all of a sudden woke an awful lot of people around the world up to how insulated and protected from such images we have been by our establishment mainstream media. Now they have to justify things not ending because Benjamin Netanyahu has no intention of stopping now. Nothing has changed at all for him. His job, his post that he covets above all else, still depends on war carrying on because the likes of Ben Gvir and Smotrich demand it. The hard right of his own government. Smotrich wants greater Israel now, conquest all the way to Damascus, taking up much of Syria, taking in Jordan, Lebanon, the West Bank as well, parts of Turkey even. There's no sign of Israel stopping now. All of that land theirs by divine right in their fevered minds. The opportunity the Hamas attack of October 7th has offered such hardline, far-right politicians is now too much of an opportunity to miss. And they'll collapse Netanyahu's government and put him in the arms of the courts before they let him stop now. Not that I personally think Netanyahu wants to stop anyway. Lebanon is now in his sights for conquest. Iran is a war in the making, are they not? But for Western leaders, well, this outcome has been a nightmare. Sinwar's death heralds them being put in a position where their pro-Israel lobbyist backers and donors will not accept a cessation of the support for Israel continuing its warfare. But support for what is going to happen next will be politicians breaking their word on when this would all end to their own people. Already, Kamala Harris's unequivocal support to carry on supporting Israel, not changing anything Joe Biden has done before, is catastrophically killing off her electoral chances amongst Muslim demographics who typically back the Democrats, offering an opportunity for Donald Trump to pull off a victory, not by backing him, but by staying home instead, not voting at all. Keir Starmer here in the UK has again raced to a podium to do a speech in light of an Israeli win, talking the usual sound bites of this death which should not be mourned, he said, along with calls for a ceasefire, humanitarian aid, and a long-term plan for peace. It isn't going to come any more than it's going to come any time over the last year. And as much as this is political positioning on his part to look like he's saying the right things to us, the British public, who deplore him, most detested prime minister in British history as he is after 100 days in office, his support will continue for Israel, just as Netanyahu will continue to make war in the region. This all began with politicians. Sunak in our case at the time, but Starmer in agreement that there could be no peace in the region for as long as Hamas was capable of carrying out another October 7th style attack. Though, of course, the scale of that attack and what Hamas were accused of, it has since turned out to have been Israel too, in no small part, due to carrying out Hannibal directives to kill their own people rather than let Hamas take them hostage. Still played down as those facts are, though. By accidentally happening upon Sinwar in Rafah and taking him out, though, Israel have achieved all of this now on the face of it. Hamas is leaderless, though the manner of Sinwar's death will have hardened resolve and people under occupation will always resist, as is their right, whether it be Hamas again or something else. A Palestinian state is essential to regional peace, but that requires taking Israel on now and forcing the issue with them. And that simply won't happen when so many Western politicians from the US, UK, Germany, and across the EU are bought and paid for to the extent they have been by the Israel lobby. Yet these politicians have now done what they said they had set out to do. So continuing the war will be anathema to their own people, a broken promise to them. And so Sinwar's death boxes them in. They are required to end matters now. Their justification for continuing is over, and their support for Israel yet won't be able to do so, and won't be able to justify that either, when this was supposed to be all about Gaza, and yet conquering Lebanon next seems to be Israel's intended aim. Selling the point they need to support Israel to take Hezbollah on next doesn't quite have the same ring. When they were striking Israel in retaliation for their disproportionate invasion of Gaza, it was a retaliation. The support, therefore, isn't the same. The issue isn't the same, although the media will bend over backwards to paint it as such. And especially having seen the civilian casualty rate in Gaza, as we all have, nobody outside political circles as we are supports the IDF anymore, actually, in my view, than they would support terrorist acts or war crimes perpetrated by Hamas. And in another TV announcement, Netanyahu just turned the screws on his Western allies again. Honest to God, a guy who abuses his allies like Benjamin Netanyahu does, it makes them look all the wetter for still supporting him in the West. Because following Sinwar's death, of course, he was going to go on TV and shut down any notion of a ceasefire, sounding like a knockoff Bible seller being all wrath of God about it and saying, we have demonstrated today that all those who try to harm us, this is what happens to them, and how the forces of good can always beat the forces of evil and darkness. The war is still ongoing and it's costly. We're still waging war. You better keep giving us more money to fund it. It's a message to those who had been talking ceasefire instead, only for the genocidal maniac to pull the rug out from under them yet again. If Sinwar's death achieved anything, it was to harden the resolve of those resisting occupation. For the West, it damns them to either stop supporting Israel as promised now, or carry on unjustifiably with all the consequences that will bring for them at the ballot box. Where Western leaders now call for an end to the fighting, a ceasefire, it won't happen. Israel will continue, as Netanyahu has said, and they will continue to support him. It's only us living in the West that can make our leaders pay a price for putting Israel first. And we absolutely must do that if we're actually going to see a ceasefire. Because it is only by ending support for these Zionists without qualification in power, and ending the arms sales to Israel by association, ending Israel's ability to continue its genocide, that we will get anywhere close to a ceasefire. Our politicians will end up still telling us that Israel has a right to defend itself. But that's going to be an increasingly difficult sales pitch now, when they are clearly the instigators and the aggressors, and those they now attack. Well, what of their right to defend themselves then? The Israel has a right to defend itself line is going to become a ball and chain around those who say it. That will also end up being Yahya Sinwar's legacy. Without support, without arms and military aid from the West, Israel is stuffed. Already its Iron Dome has been getting beaten more and more often, and the reason for that is it is now basically toast, to the point the US have had to step in, all but confirming the dome is done. Check out the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next video.
If this conflict were to evolve into a full-scale war, would any of Iran... As the conflict between Iran and Israel escalates to unprecedented levels, and with the unwavering support of Israel from Western nations, particularly the United States, the key question arises: if this conflict were to evolve into a full-scale war, would any of Iran's allies step in to assist? The relationship between Iran and Russia has historically been defined by a patron-client dynamic, with Iran frequently relying on Russia for military and technical assistance. However, this dynamic underwent a marked shift around 2022, driven by shifting geopolitical circumstances, particularly Russia's increasing isolation from the West and its urgent military needs following its invasion of Ukraine. Iran emerged as a key supplier of military drones and other armaments, reversing the traditional roles in their bilateral relationship. This period also saw Iran aiding Russia in evading Western sanctions, thus deepening their strategic alignment beyond military cooperation and into economic and technological spheres. Western media reports have noted a significant uptick in Iran's military support to Russia, including the supply of thousands of Shahed combat drones and the establishment of a drone production facility on Russian soil. Iran has also reportedly delivered short-range ballistic missiles to Russia, with CNN highlighting these developments in September 2023. Following Iran's missile strike on Israel on October 1st in support of Hezbollah, Tehran is likely preparing for military reprisals. Reports indicate that Iran is evaluating advanced Russian military technology, including S-400 missile systems, electronic warfare tools, and fighter jets, as part of a broader strategy to enhance both its defensive and offensive capabilities in the region. As part of its Air Force modernization, Iran secured a deal for Russian Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets in late 2023, although details on the delivery timeline remain unclear. Since the onset of the Syrian civil war in 2011, Iran and Russia have emerged as key military backers of the Syrian regime. Simultaneously, Russia's relations with Western powers have deteriorated due to events like its intervention in Ukraine, the Skripal poisoning incident, and accusations of meddling in Western political processes. This deterioration led to sanctions from the US and Europe, pushing Russia closer to Iran. A notable moment came in 2015 when, after the JCPOA agreement, Vladimir Putin lifted the embargo on S-300 missile systems to Iran, finalizing the delivery in 2016 as part of a broader $10 billion arms deal. Iran, China, and Russia have also intensified their military cooperation. In January 2021, the trio conducted their third joint naval exercise in the northern Indian Ocean and the Sea of Oman, continuing a series of joint military drills initiated in 2019. Following 2022, the military ties between Iran and Russia have expanded considerably, with Iran not only supplying drones but also sharing technology and expertise. This collaboration has been mutually beneficial. While Russia has received vital military equipment, Iran has gained technological insights and leverage over its larger partner. On the economic front, both nations have worked closely to navigate the challenges posed by international sanctions, positioning each other as vital partners in circumventing the Western financial and trade systems. Iran's entry into BRICS in 2024 was a notable diplomatic win, allowing Tehran to present its international isolation as lessened despite continuing challenges under U.S. sanctions. BRICS membership, which includes Russia, is expected to bolster Iran's influence in global economic discussions and facilitate deeper cooperation with other emerging economies. The partnership between Iran and Russia reached a new level when Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian met Russian President Vladimir Putin at a regional conference in Turkmenistan. The two leaders discussed escalating hostilities between Israel and Iran, along with Iran's allied groups. Russian state media reported that this meeting came ahead of a planned strategic partnership agreement between the two nations. Putin emphasized the growing strength of Russia's relationship with Iran, while Pezeshkian expressed a shared sentiment, emphasizing the importance of economic and cultural ties. Pezeshkian condemned Israel's actions in Lebanon and urged a halt to civilian casualties, attributing support for Israeli actions to Western nations. Their dialogue also touched on Israeli military operations in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah, which is supported by Iran. Both leaders condemned Israel's targeting of civilian areas in Lebanon and Gaza, with Pezeshkian expressing hope that the forthcoming BRICS summit in Russia would finalize their strategic partnership agreement. Let's take a quick pause. Could you do us a favor? If you enjoy our content, please hit the like button. To help even more, leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments. Your engagement helps us grow. Thank you. Economically, the relationship between Iran and Russia has flourished. Trade between the two countries surged to approximately $5 billion in 2023, up from $1.5 billion in 2020, largely driven by enhanced banking and financial cooperation. Both nations have worked to bypass Western sanctions by replacing the dollar and euro with national currencies in bilateral trade. This upward trajectory continued into the first quarter of 2024, with bilateral trade increasing by 48% compared to the previous year. Russian exports to Iran grew by 77%, while Iranian imports to Russia rose by 13%, illustrating a strengthening economic partnership driven by mutual strategic interests and efforts to mitigate the effects of international sanctions. In contrast, trade between Iran and China saw a decline in 2023, dropping to $14.6 billion from $15.5 billion the previous year. This decrease was largely due to a significant reduction in Chinese imports from Iran, which fell by 27%, though Chinese exports to Iran saw modest growth. Despite this, trade between the two countries continued, reaching $4 billion in the first quarter of 2024, signaling ongoing economic ties supported by cooperative agreements aimed at bolstering investments and interactions in key sectors such as transportation and industry. The growing alliance between Iran and Russia has raised alarm in both the US and Europe. Washington views the deepening military and defense cooperation between the two countries as a direct threat to its strategic interests in the Middle East and beyond. The transfer of drones and other military technology to Russia has heightened concerns about the security of US-supplied defense equipment globally and escalated regional conflicts. In response, the US has increased diplomatic efforts and intelligence activities alongside economic sanctions to curtail Iran's capacity to supply arms and escalate tensions. European concerns align closely with those of the US, particularly regarding the strategic and security implications of Russia and Iran's military collaboration. The transfer of drones and missiles is viewed as a potential threat to European security, prompting European leaders to enhance their intelligence efforts, engage diplomatically, and impose further economic sanctions aimed at limiting Iran's military capabilities and preventing further destabilization. A third and increasingly significant player in this dynamic is Turkey. Turkey occupies a complex role balancing its relationships with both Russia and Iran while maintaining its commitments to NATO and Western alliances. Turkey's involvement is largely driven by its geographic position and the need to manage security concerns in neighboring regions, particularly Syria. Turkey has cooperated with both Russia and Iran under the Astana process to address the Syrian conflict, aiming to reduce violence and facilitate political solutions. Economically, Turkey serves as a critical hub for Russian oil and natural gas, which are central to its energy security. Despite Western sanctions on Russia, Turkey continues to engage in substantial trade with Moscow, including a significant increase in the re-export of oil products, which tripled in 2023. This economic relationship positions Turkey as a key intermediary, helping Russia circumvent some Western restrictions. Turkey's purchase of Russian S-400 missile defense systems illustrates its willingness to engage with Russia despite the resulting tensions within NATO. This decision has strained Turkey's relations with the US and other NATO members but underscores its desire to diversify its military partnerships and strengthen its defense capabilities. At the same time, Turkey maintains its role within Western structures, navigating a careful balancing act between regional and global powers. Its role in brokering agreements, such as the Black Sea Grain Initiative, highlights its strategic importance as a mediator between the global North and South, further emphasizing Turkey's pivotal position in both Western and Eastern geopolitical blocs. Turkey's cooperation with Russia and Iran plays a crucial role in maintaining regional stability, particularly in the context of the Syrian conflict and broader Middle Eastern dynamics. By acting as both a mediator and a cooperative partner, Turkey helps manage power imbalances that could otherwise lead to greater instability and conflict in the region. Another part of this puzzle is North Korea. North Korea's involvement in a potential Iran-Israel conflict remains speculative, but given the historical ties between Iran and North Korea, there are some important factors to consider regarding whether North Korea might provide any form of support to Iran in such a scenario. North Korea and Iran have a long-standing history of military and technical cooperation, particularly in the development of missile technology. North Korea has reportedly assisted Iran in advancing its ballistic missile program, which has been a cornerstone of Iran's defense capabilities. This cooperation is built on mutual interests. Iran benefits from North Korea's expertise in missile technology, while North Korea gains much-needed financial resources from arms sales. There have been multiple reports of Iranian scientists and military personnel visiting North Korea to collaborate on missile development. This relationship has led to speculation that, in the event of a larger conflict, North Korea might continue to provide Iran with military technology, particularly in the field of missile systems. Such assistance could involve shipments of missile components, technology transfers, or even the provision of expertise to enhance Iran's missile capabilities, which would be vital in a conflict with a technologically superior military like Israel's. Direct military involvement by North Korea in a Middle Eastern conflict is highly unlikely due to its geographical distance, limited power projection capabilities, and focus on its own regional security, particularly regarding South Korea and the United States. However, indirect support is more plausible. North Korea could covertly supply arms, ammunition, and missile components to Iran. Given North Korea's history of arms exports and its ability to evade international sanctions, this type of covert support could be highly useful to Iran in sustaining its military operations in a prolonged conflict. Additionally, North Korea has been accused of selling weapons to non-state actors and proxy groups in the past, and there is the potential for North Korean arms to reach Iran's allies, such as Hezbollah, through clandestine arms deals. This would align with both countries' strategies of using proxies to exert influence in their respective regions. North Korea may offer diplomatic or rhetorical support to Iran in the event of a conflict with Israel. North Korea has consistently positioned itself in opposition to Western powers, particularly the United States, and has often voiced solidarity with countries that share anti-Western stances. Therefore, while North Korea's capacity for direct military involvement is limited, it could provide symbolic support in international forums, including the United Nations, where it could condemn Israeli actions and U.S. involvement aligning with Iran's narrative. There are, however, significant limitations to North Korea's ability to meaningfully support Iran in a military confrontation with Israel. North Korea is geographically distant and economically isolated, limiting its ability to project power beyond its immediate region. Furthermore, North Korea is highly focused on its own internal stability and defense posture against South Korea and the U.S., leaving little room for direct involvement in far-flung conflicts. Moreover, North Korea's military hardware, while formidable in terms of missile technology, is outdated compared to the advanced weaponry fielded by Israel and its Western allies. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching this video. We sincerely
is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Currents, your weekly news report on what's happening in China. I'm Lisa. In this episode, China has issued a new sanction list on U.S. armed companies, and the USAF will be significantly affected. China conducts a new round of exercise in the Taiwan Strait. China issued $320 billion in bonds to improve people's livelihoods. First, let's see how the USAF will be affected by China's sanctions. On the 10th of October, China announced a new sanction list targeting 8 U.S. arms companies and 10 of their executives. These individuals will no longer be able to obtain any Chinese visas, including entry to Hong Kong and Macau. Their assets in China have been frozen, and they are prohibited from engaging in any transaction or collaborations with companies or individuals in China. Why might it be a big problem for the U.S. Air Force? Well, because David Sutton, director of Asia Pacific at Lockheed Martin, is on the sanction list. For the U.S. Air Force, Lockheed Martin's F-35 fighter jets are expected to be their primary stealth aircraft of the future. Over 1,000 have already been ordered, and eventually more than 3,000 will be supplied to the US and its allies. The F-35 was intended to be the next showcase product, following the F-22 to rival China's J-20 stealth fighter jets. However, internal reviews revealed that even the F-35's ability to fly was actually built on the covert use of Chinese-made parts. Now, with China's sanction, this practice can no longer be hidden. According to a 2022 report by Politico, the secret was uncovered by the Defense Contract Management Agency in August 2022. It discovered that Chinese-made parts were the magnets contained in the F-35's turbo machine pumps. Lockheed Martin spokesperson Laura Seibert said in an interview with the Warzone magazine that the turbo machine is part of the Integrated Power Package, the IPP, which is the primary component of the electric power and thermal management system. She explained that the IPP supplies electrical power to start the engine and provides conditioned bleed air for cooling aircraft systems. In other words, if this critical component fails, the F-35 could black out mid-flight and even fail to start. After the secret was revealed, the Pentagon's response was interesting. On the one hand, they seemingly couldn't accept that such a crucial component relied on Chinese manufacturing and immediately halted deliveries of the F-35. On the other hand, according to Politico, the Pentagon announced in October 2022 that the investigation had concluded and deliveries resumed, stating that the new batch of jets no longer contained Chinese-made parts. As for the aircraft already delivered with Chinese components, William LaPlante, the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, signed a national security waiver, meaning the Defense Department would not replace the parts of those aircrafts. Now, by reviewing the F-35 crash archives in Air and Space Forces magazine, we can see that prior to October 2020, there were only 2 recorded incidents involving the F-35 in the US. However, since October 2020, there have been 7 additional incidents, with the failure rate tripling. The most recent F-35 crash occurred on May 28, 2024, at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. According to ABC, the pilot was flying the jet on behalf of the Defense Contract Management Agency. A Lockheed Martin spokesperson said the jet was being transferred from Fort Worth, Texas, where the company's F-35 factory is located, to Edwards Air Force Base, California, for modifications and testing. The stop at Kirtland was made to refuel. The aircraft encountered issues shortly after takeoff, specifically with the vertical takeoff and landing system. Air and Space Force magazine reported that the accident bears a few similarities to the crash of an F-35B at Lockheed Martin's facility in Fort Worth, Texas in December 2022. According to Wikipedia, this was the first time an issue with the vertical takeoff and landing system had been reported for the F-35. Fortunately, the pilot survived thanks to the ejection seat that was made in the UK. Now, regardless of whether the US Air Force regrets its decision to phase out Chinese-made parts, this sanction list launched by China will help them complete this process. Lockheed Martin will no longer be able to access its fund in China or directly procure any parts from the country. Moving forward, we may observe further changes in the reliability of F-35s delivered after October 2020. Of course, China doesn't intend to rely solely on sanctions to defend the country. On the 14th of October, the PLA conducted a joint military drill, codenamed Joint Sword 2024B, in the Taiwan Strait, with vessels and aircraft approaching Taiwan Island from different directions. The drill came after a speech from the leader of the Taiwan authorities, saying that Taiwan is not subordinate to China and that Beijing does not have the right to represent Taiwan. Spokesperson of the PLA Eastern Theater Command Li Xi noted that the joint drill focused on subjects like sea-air combat readiness patrol, blockade on key ports and areas, assault on maritime and ground targets, as well as joint seizures of comprehensive superiority. He emphasized that the drill also serves as a stern warning to the separatists of Taiwan Island. Meanwhile, the China Coast Guard organized a fleet vessel to conduct law enforcement patrols and maritime control operations around Taiwan, including the waters near Dongying Island and Mazu Island, as part of a patrol encircling the island. In this operation, the China Coast Guard deployed 6 formations, which is double the size of the comprehensive law enforcement drills conducted on May 23rd. Notably, among the vessels deployed was the 10,000-ton ship numbered 2901, the largest vessel currently in the China Coast Guard fleet. Interestingly, the tonnage of this vessel has surpassed that of the US Navy's Ticonderoga-class cruisers and the Allied Burke-class destroyers. Yet, it's just a Coast Guard ship, not even a warship. In response to the Mainland China's drill, the United States Department of State emphasized it remains committed to its long-standing One China policy in its official statement. In addition to the military, China has also taken steps to boost its economy. On the 12th of October, China's Ministry of Finance announced that over the next 3 months, China will issue 2.3 trillion yuan in special bonds to alleviate local government's debt pressure and improve people's livelihood, which is roughly about 320 billion US.
It's also a signal. All right, guys, so this is your end of the world update, and let's talk about the technology war because it's getting from bad to worse. And let's put it bluntly, it's getting downright desperate. The US is ramping things up from an 8 to a 20. They are beginning to realize a few things here. Even allies like the Netherlands are telling Washington restrictions on China just aren't viable. It damages the economies of the countries in the G7. On a trip to Washington, the Dutch economy minister tore apart orders to punish China. The Chinese are an important trade partner. We have our own economy to upkeep and to make sure our companies can do business freely. So chip making technology from ASML and even Japan won't stop flowing to China, which means it's just a matter of time before the Chinese catch up. Because of this, the US, Biden, he's getting very desperate, and they are now lashing out at the global semiconductor market. US officials are now on the brink of punishing the world, the entire world. A cap on exports of AI chips from Nvidia and AMD could be slapped on Pacific countries. This even includes the Middle East, and it's all in the name of national security. Over 40 countries have already been slapped with chip restrictions. There's a limit to how many AI chips they can buy from the US from companies like Nvidia. Now, this is bad for their bottom line, but to contain China, anything goes now. And here's why. China and the world, they are bypassing US sanctions because there's a ton of money to be made. As it stands, Beijing still needs Western semiconductors for their most advanced processors. A Chinese think tank has come out saying that data centers still need chips from Nvidia. Making the transition to local alternatives is too costly at this time. Making the switch to Chinese chips will take years, and in the meantime, US gear is still needed. And thanks to this situation, there's a thriving black market for traders around the world to export to China. So they buy the chips from the US, they repackage them a little, slap a little bit of magic, and ship the stuff to Beijing. And the margins are simply incredible. For the A100 chip, resellers are asking for over $22,000. That's a very big premium considering in the US, it's only around 10 grand. That's at least 100% profit margin. Some traders are even shipping entire servers to China worth $300,000, with each server holding a bunch of high-end Nvidia chips. When there's a will, there's always a way. Remember, we are talking about the most advanced chips in the market. China is the biggest producer of legacy semiconductors, so that area is covered. But when it comes to building AI models, Beijing still needs to import Western chips. Bridging the gap between the US and China will take some time. Now, the US has been restricting high-end chips to China. Companies like AMD and Nvidia, they are selling watered-down technology thanks to US sanctions. Huawei is still building its own alternatives to close the gap, but Nvidia is still in the lead with their Blackwell chips, so smuggling US products to China is going to continue. It's important we understand how US tech ends up in China, despite the sanctions being imposed. So Nvidia, they design the semiconductors. However, it's TSMC in Taiwan that makes the chips. And these products are then assembled and sold by companies like Dell. And many of these factories are spread around the world. The end products are sold through distributors and bought by smugglers in countries like Hong Kong. They acquire the chips and they bring them into China through everything from air travel and even trucks. There's simply no way to hunt them down one by one. It's just virtually impossible. And to stop this, the US has to literally punish the whole world. We are not kidding here. Stop selling chips to countries or at least impose a very brutal export quota. Maintaining the technology gap is important for the US. That's the only advantage they have left. China controls critical inputs in the supply chain like rare earths. China's manufacturing ecosystem is also world-class. If they somehow manage to close the technology gap, they can out-manufacture the US. They will bring the unit cost down so low and grab a lot of market share. That will be disastrous for companies like Nvidia because they have to outsource production to Taiwan. Whereas Chinese companies like Huawei, they can do everything within their own ecosystem. It's just one big closed loop. In China, renting cloud services using Nvidia's chips is actually cheaper than in the US. When Beijing procures those chips, the operating costs themselves are significantly lower than the West. And this is a very important advantage we can't ignore. When you can operate at lower costs, you can extend your research runway on a very limited budget. Chinese cloud providers charge their customers $6 an hour to use a server packed with Nvidia's processors. In the US, vendors charge around $10 for the same setup. So Chinese companies have a 40% cost advantage versus their Western counterparts. It's also a signal that a ton of Nvidia chips and servers are somehow magically entering the Chinese market. There's an abundance of them around, and that's why prices are just so low. But let's keep it real. Let's keep it 100. China also does their own innovation. Smuggling chips is just one aspect of the semiconductor war. And this next breakthrough changes the game. It flips the script on traditional chip foundries and threatens total wipeout for Western companies. Now, just yesterday, ASML stock collapsed by an incredible 15%. Wasn't the demand for chip makers strong? Analysts expected sales of 5.4 billion euros in Q3. But guess what? The company booked only 2.6 billion in revenue. That's over 50% down. US sanctions are beginning to destroy their bottom line, and businesses from G7 and friends, well, it just isn't enough. Despite the curbs, China still accounts for half of ASML's total revenue, coming in at 2.8 billion euros, 3 times the amount of sales to Taiwan. But there's now a serious problem going forward. Thanks to the chip war, China is now developing their own lithography machines. Chinese engineers have been working hard to close the technology gap. Beijing can now create its own deep ultraviolet machines or DUVs to make chips up to 65 nanometer resolution. The smaller, the better. Now, ASML's DUV machine can go below 38 nanometers, so China is a generation behind. But the speed at which Beijing is innovating is astounding. Over half of their lithography machines comes from ASML. Imagine what will happen in the next 2 to 3 years. China will bridge the gap, and because of US sanctions, the company can't maximize their revenue to China anymore. At that point, either two things could happen. Either ASML faces complete revenue collapse, 50% of their global sales could come crashing down, and, well, they start laying off workers. Or they ignore US sanctions and sell their most high-tech chip makers to China. ASML might just sell their extreme ultraviolet machines to win Chinese money. That is how big the Chinese market is for semiconductors, both the machines and the chips themselves. The demand is enormous. As their engineers continue to innovate, this threatens to wipe out companies like Nvidia down the line. US scientist Steve Su explains this very well.
On the legacy chips, not the cutting edge, 3 nanometer, 5 nanometer process, but the legacy 14 nanometer, 28 nanometer, the Chinese have basically already caught up, and they're going to start basically eating market share in all of those product lines. And then at Frontier, at the 7 nanometer level, SMIC is already making 7 nanometer process chips for Huawei, both for its phone, small SoCs for its phones, but also big AI accelerator chips like the Ascend 910B. So all of this has happened because U.S. policy was very stupid. And I think because U.S. policy underestimated how capable the Chinese tech ecosystem was. And they thought, what's holding you guys back is that we have a huge technological advantage over you. And that's what's going to keep you from catching up.
And here's how dangerous things are for Western chip makers. China is moving to disrupt the very technology behind semiconductors itself. According to the ITIF, China is around 5 years behind the global leaders in leading-edge chip technology. Companies like Nvidia and AMD, they are still well ahead. So instead of just playing catch-up, China is trying to leapfrog the competition. Instead of just making traditional chips the old-fashioned way, Beijing wants to use light itself to create semiconductors. Silicon photonics or optical chips is quite simple to understand here. Instead of electrons, which is the traditional method, the chips uses photons. These light particles are used to process and transmit information. It's a better way to make chips, and more importantly, the US doesn't have a dominance on this technology yet, so they can't sanction China. As we move towards quantum computing and 6G networks, you need chips of the future, semiconductors that can reduce power consumption and, more importantly, transmit data at incredible speeds. This is one field that China has a massive advantage in. They are making photonic chips. They are faster and 1,000 times better than silicon-based chips. And this should be downright frightening for the West. Their stranglehold of AI chips is about to get undone. If a Chinese product is better and cheaper, countries around the world, they will abandon Nvidia and AMD for this new alternative. The big hurdle is getting the technology right, and this is where China surprised the world once again. They were able to light up a laser light source, showing that photonic chips are indeed possible. The closer Beijing gets towards light-based semiconductors, the greater the risk to companies like Nvidia. Let's not forget that the West, today they spend a fortune on R&D. AMD, Qualcomm, and Nvidia, these are some of the leading chip giants in the US. They are spending anywhere from $5 billion to $8 billion annually in research and development. On average, that's around 20% of their total sales. It's an incredible burden that has to be funded internally. Here's the crisis they face. As China develops photonic chips, the old generation chips quickly becomes obsolete, and that will collapse revenue and make R&D extremely expensive. This is now basically a competition between the Western system and China's command economy. Can the private sector allocate resources better than a centrally planned economy? This is the big question today. The chip war is only going to get worse. More punishments are coming. The US, they can't afford to give up the lead because that would be it. China getting their hands on cutting-edge chips would mean a new price war with G7 producers. And we know Chinese supply chains are superior, but it goes even beyond that. This graphic shows us China's chip network and how self-sufficient it really is. Huawei on the right is the Chinese tech giant. The company integrates chips into solutions. They make the end products to sell to customers like you and me. All of their inputs, especially semiconductors, are coming from local Chinese manufacturers in the middle. They could be just down the road or in the next building 100 feet away, and we are not kidding here. And all of these manufacturers are getting support from the Shenzhen Major Industry Investment Group. That's government support, government money to build out Huawei's supply chain, and it has been happening since 2019. When Chinese scientists develop a photonic chip, the entire supply chain now kicks in. They will get government support to build the manufacturing facilities to bring costs down. Huawei will then integrate this new technology into computers, phones, and servers. And that's how serious China is in this semiconductor war. It's just one big show hand on the poker table. Sure, the US might have a full house of aces, but Beijing could just have a royal flush under their sleeves. But let me know what you think. How far will the US push the chip war? And how long before China catches up? Let me
Kofi, follow me.